So a lot of them when you dial in, you don't see everybody. They just got the main welcome screen until it's ready.
It looks like you have a tiara.
Oh, there you go. Lady Liberty. Here we go. How's that?
Hey.
So my hand looks like it's.
So join with computer audio or don't?
No. Leave your speaker off and your computer microphone.
So just what do I hit here then? Just already joined by phone?
You can just close out on that portion.
Oh, you just exit out?
Yep. And then you can exit out again.
Alright.
69:47.
Hey, there's Holly. Hi, Holly.
I got the game on. Just looking at the scores. I'm not watching the actual game.
Join with video. Background.
Something's not off.
Muted. What's going on? Got it. Muted.
There we go.
That's why we came early.
Well, you said it was muted.
Now you gotta have your audio off on that too.
Where was that? I didn't even see when you brought it up.
Oh, I just hit the control.
Oh, okay.
There you're.
Gotcha. So the only way anybody hears us is if we have the microphone on.
Yeah,
Can they hear me through yours?
they may.
If you say something, it will get picked up.
Right.
And if you think something, we'll pick it up too.
I'm going back home.
How dare you, what you just thought? That's terrible.
You should apologize.
Apologize to Holly.
Yeah.
No wonder no one else would show up.
Well, at least, Mike, you've got the city flag behind
You
you.
know, I just started to say, I've got flags, I'm very patriotic. Katie looks like she's in a homeless line.
Oh, do I?
No, you got the doors and
I
stuff.
got the door. That's okay.
I always find it interesting a lot of times that Dan will have his video on, but then he'll have to see another number.
Yeah, I think he calls in from his cell and participates video
Okay.
on the computer. I do that with a lot of the meetings that I do at my office.
So we have a free Tuesday morning every other Tuesday now,
Yes, we do. That's awesome. I can,
after a year and,
yeah.
How's that?
the COVID.
Oh, COVID.
Is every Tuesday at 8 o'clock. For many, many, many years. They used to be in person, now they're.
Yeah.
Update
Only
on
Mike, so.
governor messages, protocols, vaccinations, testing.
Cute.
So we don't have to worry about any meeting or anything like that?
Nope.
Yeah, no.
Make sure you're,
Just the microphone up.
Oh, just the microphone.
70-50. Okay, looks like we've got everybody but Dan. Got a couple minutes left.
Hey, folks.
And you, it's human, there's you.
Hey, you.
Howdy,
Hey,
how
you.
are you?
Hey, Odin. Hey, I like your background.
Hi,
Why are
Chris.
we opposite?
Yay. Yeah.
Who's backwards, you or me? Probably both
I have
of
no
us.
idea. They look the same to me when I look at it.
No, so your green's on this side of my screen and my green's on this side of my screen.
No, I have
Oh,
green
really?
on both on the left.
Oh,
Well, you look at my screen and they look, I'm one of
Hey,
flip-flops.
if you lower your head about 3
Yes.
inches and go to your left,
On my
it
screen.
looks like you have a halo on.
Really?
Yeah.
So
It
we
looks like you have a crown on.
There we go. So you follow.
There you go, there you go.
Doesn't look like Mike, I do.
Statue of Liberty Lake.
I know.
I'll give it another minute. Oh, there's Dan's joining. Here we are. Let me get him in order here. I got Holly, Mike, Phil, Dan, Odin, Annie, and Hugh. All right. Go Zags. Everybody turn the game off.
You had the latest score by chance?
It's 70 to 50. Zags are leading.
Ooh.
With-
And please make that the last scoring update of this meeting. I plan on watching the rest of the game after the meeting.
Okay, so I will not say anything, but given what it is, I think it's looking
Thank
good.
you.
All right, we're 6 o'clock here. Welcome, everybody, to our March 30th, 2021 Special City Council meeting. Pursuant to Governor Inslee's Order 20-25-12, issued January 11th, 2021, local governments in Phase 2 must allow persons to attend public meetings remotely, provided, however, the proclamation further allows in-person meetings under limited conditions in addition to remote public meetings. At the present time, due to the conditions required to hold in-person meetings, the City of Liberty Lake will continue to hold all public meetings remotely. I'd like to go over a few of the logistics so we can have a productive meeting. On this agenda are routine and necessary actions for our council to consider. We will provide 2 opportunities for the public to provide comments. City officials physically attending this meeting in the council chambers with me this evening are Mayor Pro Tem Kennedy, Councilmember Foyer, Councilmember Woodruff, City Administrators, Katie Allen, and IT Technician Todd Henderson. Todd will be the manager for this evening's Zoom meeting. I would like to take a roll call of the City Council participating by Zoom. At this time, I'll call your name. Please let me know if you're participating. While I see you, please answer your presence. Councilmember Severs?
Present.
Councilmember Dunn?
Go Zags.
Councilmember Kurtz?
Present.
And Councilmember Langford.
Here,
Great.
not
City
there.
staff also attending remotely are Finance Director R.J. Stevenson, Police Chief Damon Simmons, Planning, Engineering, and Building Services Director Lisa Key, Library Director Jandy Humble, City Clerk Ann Swenson, Operations and Maintenance Director Jen Camp, City Engineer Ben Schmidt, and HR Manager Heidi Workman. As I mentioned earlier, there are 2 opportunities for public comment. When those times come, I will acknowledge public participation. There's a 2-minute limit during the regular citizen comment period. For the record, please let us know your name and if you're a City of Liberty Lake resident or not. To participate in citizen comment period, please choose the chat feature on Zoom. That request will go to our IT technician, Todd, and he will let me know if there are people waiting to make comments. Finally, anyone who's not speaking, please make sure you're muted until it is time for you to speak. The first agenda on the item is the invocation. Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Dear Heavenly Father, I pray that you be with us this evening. Help us as we go through the business of the city. In your son's name we pray. Amen.
Yes, we pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Call the meeting to order, take roll call. So we've got Councilmember Woodruff. Present. Mayor Pro Tem Kennedy.
President.
Councilmember Foyer.
Here.
Councilmember Langford.
Present.
Councilmember Kurtz. I think your mic's not working, Annie. You're here, okay. And Councilmember Severs.
Present.
Okay, got everybody. All right, so now we move to agenda approval. Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. For the council consideration that we move ordinance number 8 and reverse 8 and 7 to have the ordinance before workshop discussion.
We have a second to move number 8 next to number 6. Moved and seconded by Councilmember Woodruff. Any discussion? No discussion, all in favor of moving the workshop discussion to after the ordinances, say aye. Raise your hand.
Aye.
Any opposed? Doesn't look like it, so we passed 7 out of 7. So the amendment is made. So
Yes.
now we need to approve the agenda, yes.
Need a motion to accept the change in the agenda approval.
So the motion is to approve the agenda as amended?
Yes.
Okay, we have a second. Second by Councilmember Woodruff. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Aye. All right, we move on to citizen comments. Todd, do we have anybody who wants to make a comment tonight?
No.
Can I give you guys, and everybody a little minute here, if you guys want to jump in. Let me know if anybody's popping up. Okay, not hearing any. There will be another citizen comment period after the workshop. All right, that brings us to ordinance, first read ordinance for number 269B, amending the 2021 budget. And
Ordinance number 269B, City of Liberty Lakes, Spokane County, Washington. An ordinance amending ordinance number 269 passed by the City Council on December 15, 2020, entitled, "An Ordinance of the City of Liberty Lake, Washington adopting a budget for the period January 1, 2021 through December 31, 2021, appropriating funds and establishing salary schedules for established positions."
all right, thank you, Ann. Do we have we had discussed suspending the rules and going to second read. Is there anybody who would like to make that motion?
I would make a motion, we suspend the rules for the second, have the second read ordinance.
Okay, all right, so do we have a second to suspend the rules to move to the second read?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Councilmember Woodruff. All right, Ann, we've suspended the rules to move to second read.
Second read ordinance number 269B.
Vote, hold on,
Yeah,
hold on, I forgot to take the vote.
Yeah.
Oh,
We were moving
sorry.
so fast, I just got so excited. Any discussion on suspending the rules to move to second read? No discussion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Okay, let's try that again, because I had some lag. How about everybody in favor, raise your hand so I can see you. Okay, we have 7 out of 7. Thanks, guys. Sorry, I jumped ahead. All right, Ian, your turn.
Okay, sorry about that. Second read ordinance number 269B, City of Liberty Lakes, Spokane County, Washington. An ordinance amending ordinance number 269 passed by the City Council on December 15, 2020, entitled, "An Ordinance of the City of Liberty Lake, Washington adopting a budget for the period January 1, 2021 through December 31, 2021, appropriating funds and establishing salary schedules for established positions."
Thank you. Chief Simmons, I don't know if you wanted to walk us through this real quick before we call for a motion and a vote. Stop us all.
It's not necessary.
Okay, all right. So if anybody want to move this second read?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I make a motion, we approve ordinance number 269B.
Okay, all in, do we have a second? Councilmember Woodruff, second. All in favor? There's no discussion, please indicate by saying aye. Oh, raise your hand, since it's an ordinance. All right, great. No, all right, any opposed?
Madam
All right,
Mayor,
so ayes have it. Yes, ma'am.
for a second read ordinance, we invite citizen comments prior to the final vote of council.
I looked for Katie on that.
I know.
She's doing me wrong this
I
time.
did.
Thanks, Ann. So are there any citizen comments on this budget amendment? It's for the public's purpose. We're adding another FTE to the police budget. No impact to the budget financially. No comments? Todd?
Damon's having issues.
Oh, Dan, are you on?
Damon has challenges with his mic.
Okay. All right. So I guess if there's no citizen comments, let me take that vote again real quick. So all in favor of passing ordinance 269B, please indicate by raising your hand. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, ordinance passes. Thanks, everybody. All right, so we are moving on to our main reason for being here tonight is workshop discussion about our capital facilities plan. So I do want to check and make sure all the council members got the updated documentation. So Katie sent out an email with a PowerPoint from Lisa and one from Phil. And then there was an updated PowerPoint from Lisa that added the funding sources. Can anybody let me know if anybody had any trouble getting those? We all good? Good deal. All right, so Lisa, we were kind of talking before the meeting. If you'd like to go first and walk us through your slides, and then Councilmember Follier has put a presentation together, which will help us work through the rest of the discussion.
Sorry, I said that sounds good to my new
now,
microphone.
okay, now we hear you.
Next slide, please. Thank you. So what I've done with this is I've really taken the three matrices that council prioritized, and I put each of those three matrices, I put the projects in the order of the prioritized score. I've included the funding source, programmed cost, and program year. So the first one is parks and public facilities. Now, I want to remind you that that when you did the prioritization, you excluded projects that were already underway, like the public works yard. And so in looking at this, it made sense that we would highlight the projects that have been funded for 2021 and remove them from the list. Next slide, please.
Okay. Thanks, Lisa. I was wondering what the difference was there. Appreciate it.
Well, because I wanted you to track with me why I removed the 2021 projects. So the first couple projects were high priorities, but until council has directed staff in terms of the scope and budget for those projects, we can't really, we're really looking for direction as staff from the city council to tell us what's going on with that. As you'll see, we do have some additional parks projects that are funded for next year. One of the things I will also point out to you is that you do not see asset management. You did not prioritize asset management projects. So that's not even really part of this list, which is a shortcoming. And I've prepared these slides really to give you an opportunity to talk through what is in the capital facilities plan, what you may want to provide scope to, what you may want to eliminate from this, what you may want to bring forward or recognize based upon your changed priorities, if there are any. Next slide, please. So the next slide is doing the same thing with transportation projects. Again, we highlighted the projects that were funded for 2021, and it also does not reflect projects that had already been underway, like Harvard Road and Henry Road. So it doesn't give a true picture of the work program that's affects staff, but it does. But next slide, please. But we do eliminate the 2021 projects. So really it's a much simpler list of projects in transportation. But again, I think transportation is the place where I think you don't see our asset management projects like Kramer Road or Kramer Parkway overlay or Appleway overlay. Those are in there, and that's really driven by the condition of the road. No pun intended. Next slide, please. The third list was trails and pedestrian pathways. And again, when we eliminate the projects that we have funded already, it really brings us down to just two projects. Next slide, please. My intent in preparing this kind of summary for you, again, is to give you the opportunity to use these as a resource or a point of reference as you're talking about the different types of projects. Does anybody have any questions for me on this?
Councilmember Dunn, and then Councilmember Sievers. Go ahead.
Lisa, to respond to the current plan not including near-term asset management requirements, could you summarize what you think are the largest and nearest term objectives? I did hear Kramer Parkway overlay as well as Appleway overlay.
Yeah, and I think the Kramer Parkway, we also have Country Vista, but because we're doing additional improvements to Country Vista, that's actually a capital project. We're providing we're expanding kind of the scope of what that roadway looks like. But yeah, so Kramer Parkway was actually out in, I believe, 2024 or 2025 initially. But because of current conditions on the roadway, we are right now, we actually have a geotech in there to evaluate it as work is being done by the adjacent developer. We've got the road closed. We'll look at what it is and we'll determine whether or not what the conditions are and whether or not we can save the road with a preservation project, or if we really need to look at a full rebuild. So we'll have more information. Ben will actually be coming back to you and giving you a little bit of an update at your April 6th meeting. So that's one to have on your radars for sure.
So Lisa, as a follow-up, just to paraphrase, Kramer Parkway as an objective is not currently in the capital facilities plan, but is one which the staff is actually currently investigating as the potential of a, I'd say, short-term requirement.
Right. No,
is that a good way to put that?
It's actually in the capital facilities plan as an asset management project, but because it's rapidly deteriorating, we may need to move it up sooner, or we may need to look at it as a full rebuild, and we'll know more, as I said, next week.
Okay. The second I heard was Appleway. Sorry to I want to try and resolve Appleway overlay. Does that have the same sense of urgency?
I don't think that it does. I think that we had it sooner. I think we had it sooner in and actually it's not Appleway, it's Mission. I'm sorry. My apologies. But I don't have enough screens to look at all my materials, but yeah, so it's there. We know that we need to do some overlays on these, but they're not deteriorating as rapidly as Kramer Parkway. So in fact, you'll be talking about how we might reprioritize these as part of the transportation improvement program, which we need to bring back to you in May for adoption in June.
Thanks.
Okay, I had Councilmember Sievers and then Councilmember Langford.
Lisa, do you mind going back to your first slide with the, I think it was parks and like the.
Hugh, you're a little bit muffled.
Lisa, do you mind going back to your first slide?
Yeah, Todd is doing that. There we go.
There you go, parks and public facilities. I think I understand what your point is on because you haven't gotten scope out of council that there's no program cost yet. I think it'd be valuable on these if you put a range of costs, for instance, the trailhead facility and the library facility. We kind of looked over different options and there's sort of a low end option versus the high end option, even if the even if the option said low end was 500,000, high end was 10 million. I don't remember what the exact costs were on the trailhead facility. I think it'd be nice to have some sort of cost range on the program cost.
And I can tell you that. So the range for trailhead was just to do asset management is about 3 million. Whereas the upper end, which is the full meal deal, was about $10 million. So 3 million to 10 million is the trailhead facility. I actually can't speak to the library facility because I don't think that we have really a range even from what we had from the library capital facilities plan was what was going to be needed in the future in terms of space. And then there's the question of, do we look at renovations? Do we look at a new facility? And I think there's a whole nother level of analysis that probably needs to go into that, with a little bit of direction from council to maybe guide staff. But perhaps Jandy could speak to that.
No, I don't, are we at that point where we want to get into that detail?
No.
I don't think we
Probably
are.
not.
So if we-
No, I just think
we can put
when we
that-
have those, it'd be nice to just have
Yeah.
these updated as just a cost range as a, or Orchard Park Community Gardens. I know some of these we haven't put numbers to yet, but we could probably put some sort of cost range out there.
Agreed.
And Lisa, I understand your point completely on the library facility, because if we move to a brand new facility, the sky's the limit. But
All right, thanks. Councilmember Langford, I have you next.
Thank you, Mayor. Lisa, going back to Kramer Road, is that part and parcel to our preparation for the overpass?
No, it's not. It actually has to, this is actually an asset management project that we have for an overlay. We do have some frontage improvements associated with the public works yard that are going to get done this year. There's also some frontage improvements that Legacy Ridge West is doing right now, along with adding some utilities in the roadway. And in fact, the road's closed for so long precisely because they have to dig so deep to put in the sewer lines.
Okay.
Long story short is that beyond that small section there, the larger concern has to do with the condition of pavement and through spring thaw, the freeze thaw cycle, et cetera. And it has gotten, we've actually put weight limits on it this year. I think Ben's on here and he could probably speak to that a little bit more eloquently than I.
Yeah, if it's okay, at least I can jump in. So the main issue that we're looking at here is the structural integrity of Kramer Parkway. And I think tying back to a bigger discussion that maybe is worth consideration is a pavement management plan and a condition plan. Basically what this does is you drive a vehicle around that assesses the structural integrity, the visual aspects of the pavement, and it helps us tie into an asset management program for pavement that would help us make some better decisions about how to plan these within the capital facilities plan. Because, I mean, as we saw with Kramer, it was planned for 2024, but we could make a little bit better decisions if we knew what the condition of the structural integrity and the overall condition of the roadway is and how much life it had left. And there's some pretty innovative programs out there that allow us to adjust things as projects happen or adjust things if we repair things, and can maybe help us develop a little bit better plan. So instead of looking at individual projects, I would be a potential advocate of shifting the pavement condition index and that pavement data collection up to maybe next year, just so we can make some better decisions. But yes, Kramer was one of those ones that we had slated out further as we get into it and these other projects happen and this freeze thaw happens. We're kind of being reactive to repair this. Unfortunately, we're well staged for a grant to apply for, but I think we could plan a little bit differently and maybe a little bit smarter in some of those fund contributions.
Thank you.
All right.
And I will say, if I could just tack on that, Ben's point is very well taken. We do have that project for the pavement management in the asset management part of the capital facilities plan, but it was not planned until 2024. So.
Right. Thank you, Lisa. Mayor Pro Tem, you had your hand up?
Yes, please. Clarification of funding source. I see HRM What does that
I
stand
was
for?
gonna ask RJ to go.
Harvard Road mitigation. Let me, if we could,
But-
Todd, can you take us back to the beginning slide? I will, so GF is general fund.
And Lisa, just a sec. I was gonna, either you or RJ can take that, but that was going to be my next request, would be to go through what these each stand for in a very brief description of where the money comes from and what it can be used for. So I don't know if you want to tackle that or if you want RJ to.
I'll turn it over to RJ.
Okay.
Come on. All right. HRM, let's start with that one first. That's a Harvard Road mitigation dollars. Those are basically voluntary impact fees that a developer or owner would pay into if they didn't want to do their own traffic study. So most of our people out there do pay into this Harvard Road mitigation. It can only be used for projects identified in the Harvard Road Mitigation Plan. So it's really street projects for the most part. GF is general fund. So general fund can be used, those revenues, property tax, sales tax, utility tax, permit fees, those can be used spent on pretty close to anything. There's not usually restrictions to that, to those monies. Your REET, REIT, those are your real estate excise taxes. There's a REIT 1 and a REIT 2. They're both 0.25% on the sale of property. So when someone sells their house or land sells, the seller pays into this REIT. Those are also items that can only be spent on capital. They can be spent on streets, parks, facility, capital items, but they do have to be identified in your CFP plan before you can spend those dollars. You see library capital, that's just identifying a specific capital fund that we have set up for the library. It does not have a specific revenue source. It's just money that we set aside in there each year that can be used towards the library grade. So did I cover all the acronyms?
Let's check UT.
Utility tax.
Yeah.
UT is
And
utility.
we all know that it all goes to the streets.
Yep.
And we have, we've got stormwater APA, we have stormwater APA and ECY.
Okay. So stormwater master plan. So stormwater, we do have a utility, stormwater utility. I believe we collect $8 per parcel for it based on based on the size of how much. What am I trying to say? So usually all single residents, I believe, pay currently $6 per year in the stormwater fund. But if you're a larger parcel like Home Depot, you're paying for the total pervious area that you've taken up. So that parking lot would be a lot of areas. So they're paying $8 per unit price. Those items, those revenues can only be spent on stormwater facilities, whether operations or capital. So the swales, street sweeping, those are some items that the stormwater pays for. APAs, the aquifer protection account. So those are dollars that are also collected that are to be spent similar to stormwater. Everything that's spent on that has to have some kind of correlation where it protects the aquifer. And then ECY, I believe that is the grant that we have with Ecology. So that's why those three items are kind of lumped together, because we have I think a 75-25%, our portion's 25% to do this stormwater master plan.
Sorry, RJ, if I may jump. Oh, I was going to say, RJ, if I can jump in really quick too, just to tie on that stormwater master plan also includes reassessment of what those fees are. That's what part of what we won in that grant application was to take a look at those again and make sure they're applicable.
Ben, can you correct me if I'm wrong? I think our grant was somewhere in the $165,000, $170,000 range. Is that right?
Correct, which pays for roughly 3/4 of the total estimated project cost.
Great, thank you. And thanks for going through those those funding sources, RJ, I know, with, sometimes, we're not clear, and I know we have some newer council members, so hopefully that helped. Does anybody have any questions on the funds? Go ahead, Mike.
RJ, do you happen to know off the top of your head, the Harvard Road mitigation, what kind of dollar amount we have in there right now?
I can get that to you in about a minute. If you give me a minute, I can tell you the amount. I think it's in the $200,000 to $300,000 range, because we have we do a pretty good job of utilizing those dollars, because we've been using them for the traffic signals that we've been putting in. So the other thing with the Harvard Road mitigation is we want to try to turn around the spending on it quickly, because we only have a 5-year window. If we don't spend the funds within 5 years, we have to technically give it back to the developer. So.
Additional question with that Harvard Road mitigation fund, could any of that be utilized for the $500,000 we paid for that acre of land at that corner?
No, it's got to somehow mitigate traffic. So if you can make that correlation, then yes, but.
Oh, we cut the corner off, that mitigated traffic. And gave us an area for a dog park.
A really small one.
Definitely not.
Oh, it's for small dogs.
So RJ, if you could, and again, I apologize, Phil, there's some things I want to make sure we get on the table before we get into each of the projects. You and I had some discussions with regards to cash flow. With regard, I know there's concerns about, well, how do we may be on the hook for the $6 million for the overpass, and then we've got these other projects we want to do. What's our cash flow going to be? Because one thing I want to make sure that everybody's focused on as we're talking about these projects is, in some cases, the funding sources may be totally separate. So we may be able to pay for A and B out of separate funds, though it may look at first like we can't do both at the same time, but if the funding sources are different, we might be able to do two things at once. Can you do a high level run through of like where we are in REIT and cash flows and all that?
Yeah, so REIT is currently very, it's healthy. We did get the reimbursement last year for Orchard Park, so it would look like if you're tracking, it was down significantly, but that was because we had to cash flow the Orchard Park and then get that money back. So so they're able to do quite a bit of projects right now. As for the Kramer Road overpass, I'm trying to get my correct terminology on roads now. So that is lift and TIF eligible, and we're presenting it into phases. So the design of Kramer Road, we're spending $1.5 million. We're working on getting reimbursed for that. So it's not taking the full 6 million in one chunk. And even the full 6 million isn't really 6 million if you take in the fact that we got over $1.2 million for just the appraisal side of it. So really you're looking at a cash out of pocket of 4.8. And if we take a chunk of it, you're down to 3.3. And so that is our construction costs. And we won't know that final number until they have that Kramer Road built. But there is sufficient money right now in the general fund cash flow to help cash flow that to get the money reimbursed back to us. And we're not sure if we're into it for the full 3.3 until they get into construction. We'll know more when they start opening bids here, I think, in the next few weeks. So we already have the public works yard already scheduled, forecasted out to come out of the REIT. I know it might take us an extra year, but that's already taken into account. So, your REIT funds, go back to them. I know I'm jumping around, are very healthy. Your general fund cash balance right now is very healthy. If you're looking at long-term projects, so kind of going back to maybe Trailhead, which is some larger ticket, REIT is something that you can use for debt service payments. So if you're looking to go into a debt service where it's a councilmanic bond, you can pay that out over 20 years using REIT with a general fund backing it up. But cash flow wise, we're at a very positive area. I hope that answered your question.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think Katie's got a comment, and then I think I see Annie's little hand up thing.
I'll go really fast. You know, I think Mayor raised a very good point, which is we're not spending the same money multiple times, and that there's a nervousness about, do we have enough money to cover our debt? So what I want council to be aware of is when we have debt, it's called debt service, we put it into our budget and we manage that debt service so that we aren't going to run short on cash flow. And there are tools in the financial world where we can track to make sure that we have enough money to cover the debt and that we're not going to run short. And if we do run short, then there are other alternatives. But RJ, I don't know, I don't want to go back into a lot of detail, but I want council to know that we manage debt through the budget process to make sure that we have the cash to make the debt service. Is that correct, RJ? And we incorporate it into our forecast.
That has been our practice in the past. The positive right now is that we haven't had to manage debt for the last couple of years, but the way the former debt instruments that we've had with the city when it came with Trailhead and City Hall and the town square, those were there were councilmatic bonds that was using existing revenue sources of property tax, sales tax being pledged to pay for them. So if we are looking at an instrument of debt service going in the future, that will be calculated in the forecast. If it's using REIT, that's going to be calculated specifically in the REIT forecast and how it affects other projects that may be a priority. So.
Thank you. Councilmember Kurtz, you've got your hand up.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question was back when we were talking about the Harvard Road Mitigation Fund and also talking about the Kramer Road and needing to evaluate that, I guess. And given that there is a lot of development going on there, has the developer, I guess, contributed to the Harvard Road Mitigation Fund for that area already, or how does that work?
So if I may, Councilmember Kurtz, we collect impact fees, the Harvard Road mitigation fees, at the time of building permit issuance, and it's actually calculated based upon the trips that will be generated from a given development, and that's true of single-family home, multifamily home, or commercial endeavors.
The answer is yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so if there's no more questions, I see Mayor Pro Tem's finger up. Is
Well, there's only one question.
Go ahead.
RJ, for the benefit of everybody, can you give us the dollar amount in, oh, never mind, you already covered that. Thank you.
So, and just to update you, so currently Harvard Road Mitigation has a little over $200,000 in the fund.
So if there's no more questions about the funding types, sources, balances, I'd like to go ahead and turn it over to Councilmember Foyer to put together some slides to kind of help guide us through the process.
Thank you, Mayor. Everybody hear me all right? Yeah? Perfect. Just want to start by saying, I just wanted to put something together to help frame the discussion for the evening, with the hopes that we'd stay on topic, hopefully make some decisions, and identify some timelines for some of these bigger projects. Not looking to take anybody's thunder away, but I was just looking for some sort of a format. So that's why I put this together. Nothing more, nothing less. So if I can, the first slide, thank you. I'm not going to read every one of these, but just some of the highlights, you know, that having a capital facilities plan is a GMA requirement. It offers communities vision, framework for decision makers, us, provides transparency, and provides the orderly replacement of capital assets, and it helps avoid surprises. Next slide, please. Capital facilities, streets, waters, and stormwater, schools, parks, recreation, police, fire, so on. Next slide. Rolling stock, public buildings, bridges. We don't have any airports, but any other major long-lasting asset, including land that is not provided for public purpose. Next slide.
So what's rolling stock?
We're only, and that's something I'm gonna bring up later, but
Okay.
we're only stocking vehicles.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So just some examples of some
A
life
train car.
cycles. A train car, yeah.
Yeah.
So just some examples of how long pavement lasts, how long curbs last. I mean, everything has a shelf life. So, and all the way down to our, you know, something we talked about here a couple meetings ago was the police, fleet. I had no idea some of those cars were as old as they were. If they were on our capital facilities plan, we could identify that and plan 6 years in advance to replace them and save the chief the trouble of asking us. So anyhow, next slide, please. Levels of service. So this means something different for everybody. Minimum capacity for public facilities. What's interesting about this is I've looked at some of the other CFP plans from some of our neighbors, you know, Cheney, Post Falls, the local area, and in comparing it to some of the assessments that we've received, and some of the assumptions that we've had discussions regarding, it can be a pretty big spread, pretty big variable. And one of the things I'm hoping that we can discuss is what we need may not necessarily be the national average or the state average or whatever have you. So next slide, please. And then, of course, like we talked earlier, here's just the funding resources. You know, RJ has given us a pretty good heads up on what those all are. So next slide, please. Identifying current and future capital facility needs, estimating costs and potential revenues, 6-year plan, 20-year plan. Next slide. So, I had a little bit of schooling from Katie across the way here. So the CFP plan is an inventory of existing capital facilities and a 6-year forecast, right? Any new project in the CFP should ask the following. Do we want the project? If we want it, for example, what do we want? Well, we want a statue of the mayor at City Hall, right? Doesn't get into the specifics of what color it is or how tall it's going to be or any of that stuff, but it just says, this is what we want. If we know what we want, then what is the budget? Well, that statue, we don't want to spend more than $5,000, okay? It's going to be a pretty darn nice statue, let me tell you. So then, if we know the budget, then where are we going to get the money from? We're going to get it from the general fund. And so when we know, now that we know how to pay for it, when do we want to do it? What year are we going to do it? Fair enough? So once you answer those questions, you can move into the detailed discussion. And since I'm a home builder, as many of you know, kind of correlated it to that. Similar to a home purchase. When somebody comes to me, you know, one of the first things, before they even come to me, they say, do I need a new home? Do I want one? Yes, I'll grow my home. And they tell me what they want. I need a 2,000 square foot home, and they tell me what the style is going to look like, craftsman style. They like walk out, and my budget is $550. Oh, and by the way, very important, I am pre-approved from the bank. Fair enough. We have those discussions before we talk about colors, interior finishings, anything else. Fair enough? Next slide, please. So, I have to thank RJ for helping me with this slide because this is all him, not me. So thank you, RJ. We've kind of already talked about some of these. RJ, is there anything on here that we missed from earlier?
So on this slide, and this goes a little bit more detail with the general fund and the streets about the different revenue sources, what they're used for. We did cover Harvard Road mitigation and the REIT. We didn't touch on TIF and lift on that one because it's a reimbursement basis on what we're doing over in the River District, and it can not necessarily include the city. The Liberty Lake Utility District could be well, the builder Greenstone over there, or one of the other builders that has a project that's a public project, not private, could seek reimbursement for the through this fund if we concur and the county concurs and they follow the correct procurement guidelines. So that's the one area we haven't touched on. The TIF is 15 million. We increased that here last couple of years ago to extend it for another 5 years, and I think we increased it up to 20 million to generate over its lifetime. LIFT is more of a sales tax component, and that lasts until 2034. But using these funds, we built Orchard Park. We're looking for reimbursement from Kramer Parkway, and we believe that we've been able to fund it so it can definitely handle these projects.
Go ahead, Phil.
I have a question. One of my questions regarding this is the TIF and lift. So RJ, what, I guess my understanding is there's no guarantee that we're gonna get the funds. Just so everybody understands, we put out the funds to get reimbursed for the funds, is that correct? So maybe help me understand what percentage of success we have with TIF and lift versus not.
So far, it's been 100%. So we've done well. Now, Orchard Park being the first big case, but I think when we initially look for what projects are in the TIF and lift, they are identified in our capital facilities plan. So that's working with Greenstone and them identifying what they're working on, what's eligible for lift, and they've been 100% successful as well. And then we're concurring with the county. So it's the partnership that we have with the county. We haven't been turned down. We don't, especially with Kramer Parkway, that is such a big project for all the different jurisdictions, and then Spokane County has their portion of it too. We're not foreseeing any issues with not getting funding for that. So right now it's 100% because we're all in agreement that this is what it's for. It's been identified when the original plan was put together back in 2006. It included an overpass going over I-90. So this is not a surprise for anybody. So as long as we're following the plan, there shouldn't be any issues with funding.
Looks like Councilmember Dunn has a question.
So RJ, to paraphrase, if the spending is identified within the rules of what's defined, there is no uncertainty about its resultant reimbursement.
Correct.
All right, Councilmember Langford.
Yeah, RJ, we don't know exactly how much the overpass is going to cost. All right, we have an idea. We've committed to it. Our overruns, if this, for whatever reason, if this exceeds what we thought it was going to, how do we know if there's enough in lift and TIF to cover it at payment time? And if not, can it come out from subsequent years?
So let me ask the second question first, because that's a simpler one. Yes, you can in subsequent years. The cash flow identified right now, there is enough money in the fund. Now, if it's going significantly over, and we know we're on a certain percentage of that going over, that's something we're going to have to work through. I don't have an answer for that, but we would get reimbursed once there was money in the fund. There was a lot of projects in the queue for that, but some of them don't get off the ground for another 2 or 3 years.
Okay, you answered my question well. Thank you.
Okay. I think Katie wants to jump in here too.
Councilmember Langford, I also want to share with you, as this project moves forward, we will get more and more information. So once the bids open, I believe May something, 20th, we will know more what the contractors bid on this project. When the project gets out of the ground, we will know if there's any unforeseen conditions. So our intelligence on the budget gets better and more fine-tuned every step that this project moves forward. And then the other thing I want the council to know is that we have monthly meetings with WashDOT, and we go over the nickels and dimes and the dollars. And we're tracking all 3 projects, because remember, this is part of a $26 million investment between Barker and Harvard, which came in low, which was good. But we get more and more information every time this project takes another step. We get more solid information. But right now, it's about managing risk, and the risk is bidding it. What are the bids going to come in at? And then getting out of the ground. Are there going to be anything in the unforeseen conditions that need to be addressed? But right now, it's moving fairly well.
Good point. Thank you.
Mayor.
All right, yeah, go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong on this statement, but for the benefit of everybody who's listening to this, we talk about tips and lift in the area. To remind everybody, is the area we can utilize tips and lift in is on the northwest part of the
River District.
Right, River District, the northwest part of the city. That also extends over the river to where all that farmland is right now. There's nothing developed. So keep in mind, is that that's starting to get developed. The county is going to be more interested in taking some of those funds in the future and utilizing that. So it'll put us in a position maybe not to be able to tap it as much as we've done now. But so far, we've had great success.
Okay, go ahead, Phil.
Yeah, thank you. A follow-up to that then. So I'm clear, is this pool of funds for TIF, is it a regional boundary or is it countywide?
So
By
this,
district, it's called the River District RDA, River District. I can point to it. The property referred to is right over here, south of Euclid to the river.
Right.
That is in the RDA.
Okay.
It's outside the growth management area. So for it to develop, there's some land use decisions that have to be made. Okay? Because right now there is no public infrastructure over here as far as water, sewer, and streets. So basically, it's the boundaries, let me make sure I say this correctly. The boundaries are here, down to here, and then up here. That's the RDA.
Okay.
And I can provide the boundaries to the council.
Yeah, that'd be good, thanks.
I guess what I'm wondering is the pool of funds that you apply for reimbursement, it's obviously not just the city, it's other entities. So how does that work with each other?
Well, we've got a joint list of
So
projects.
we meet with the developers, and we come up with an agreement on what projects are going to be included for reimbursement. RJ makes sure that there's enough money in the forecast to cover those projects. The council approves the projects, and then we take it to the county commissioners and they approve it. So there's, RJ, am I saying that correctly?
yeah, there's checks and balances. So when you're looking at updating the capital facilities plan, you'll notice down, usually it's in like in a green color, but it's usually it's paid for by developer. Those are items that are that we're going to take over, or the Liberty Lake Water and Sewer District is going to take over the ownership of it, but they're building it and looking for reimbursement. But we have to approve, it has to be in our capital facilities plan before they can even seek reimbursement. And the way I understand, the county too would have to, if they had anything specific, it would have to be identified in that plan as well.
Okay.
They don't have any plans on the north side of the river right now.
Correct.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
Question.
Oh, go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. RJ, can you remind us, what is their impact fees we receive on each residence being built and also the apartments? Was it like 600 and some odd and 300 and some odd?
Are you talking about Harvard Road mitigation with the impact fee?
Yeah, impact fees for every house that's being built and also each apartment's being built.
I'm going to defer maybe Lisa or Ben. I don't have that. I don't have the Harvard Road.
It's, excuse me, it's $762 per PM peak hour trip. So it depends on
Can
the.
you repeat that?
$762 per PM peak hour trip. So we actually reference the ITE trip generation manual to determine what the trips generated per land use per land use type is. We do have a table that summarizes the common ones, but very often when we get a more complex land use, we're actually going to the trip generation tables.
And then there's whole nother formula for the businesses. Okay, go ahead, Phil.
Just another comment if I can, regarding the sales tax. I know we talk quite often about how well we're doing in sales tax revenue, but in my world, part of that is attributed to the cost of the product. So I was saying something the other day, a piece of OSB wall sheeting a year ago was $8, it's now 32. So for one piece, it's still one piece, I still gotta have it to build a house. But as in relationship to revenue for the city, it's sales tax on $8 versus $32. So just want everybody to realize that when we look at our sales tax numbers, our revenue going forward, it might be skewed when the market finally corrects. Thank you.
All right. Any other comments before we move on with Phil's presentation? No? Okay, good.
All right, thank you. Next slide, please. Yeah, we've kind of already, again, help from RJ on this one, talked about debt financing. RJ, do you want to touch on this a little further?
Sure. This is just more for FYI. We're not proposing any kind of bonds tonight. So, but there's basically two different types. There's a voted debt versus non-voted debt. And the voted debt is where you go out to the voters and ask them if you bring the project to them, like we did with the community center a few years ago, and said, this is what we estimated property tax increase is going to be. This is how much it's going to, this is what you're going to get for it. So typical debt structures are usually set up for 15, 20, 30 years in this realm, but it is a vote by the people and they would see an increase in their property tax, and it would spell it out on the property tax that they were specifically paying for this. Then there's the non-voted or councilmanic bonds, GO bonds, also referred to. These are debt issued by city council by ordinance. It's usually, it's does say in the ordinance how the city does plan on paying for the debt. So that can be saying we're going to say this much in property tax or sales tax is going to meet this to meet the debt issuance. There is also another type of debt. It's a revenue bond. You can look at service fees. Typically you see water and sewer utilities using this, but you could do a revenue bond for our city. Items like the stormwater fee could apply to that. The golf course, rounds per golf could apply to that, but you usually will have something backing it up in case those predictions and service fees don't cover it. So they're not common outside of the water and sewer utility. And then at the bottom, I did inquire up what the current bond rates are. So this is about 2 or 3 weeks old, but a 15-year bond is a 1.48% up to a 30-year bond at 2.23%.
RJ, real quick, it's been a really long time since we've discussed how much we are eligible for with regards to councilmanic bonds. I know years ago when we did the first community center pool project, I think it was around $16 million. Do you have any idea what our limit is now, just out of curiosity?
I know it's north of 25 million, but I don't recommend going that high.
No, of course. Of course. All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Councilmember Langford.
Yeah, RJ, do these bond rates apply to all the types as discussed?
Yes, there will be some conditions and exceptions once you get in it, depending on what kind of revenue or what pledge you make to pay for it. So,
thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, and any other comments? No, we'll go. Councilmember Dunn.
Hey, RJ, in a opinion for your time here at the city, have you seen rates this low before?
They've been hovering around this area for a few years now. They're still really they're good. I think if I go back and look at the ones that we had back in their mid 2000s, we were anywhere from 4% all the way up to 4.8. So these are good rates of what we've historically been looking at. Because of the federal government and what they've been doing with the interest rates, that's why we haven't seen much fluctuation in bond rates going up or down. They've been low for a few years now.
And as a follow-up,
Councilmember
the city has a bond rating, I'll call it, a debt worthiness. It's akin to a personal consumer debt rating. What's the city's debt rating?
We don't have a debt rating. We haven't gone through the process of being rated yet. So I would say because of our cash balances, our physical policy, good audits, that our rating would be very favorable.
Thanks.
Go ahead, Councilmember Foyer.
Thank you. One question I have, RJ, is on the, is there a, how do I frame this? Is there a length of time that you have before you use the bond funds? I mean, can I borrow today and not use it for 2 years from now at this rate?
Technically, yes. But you do have to identify what your scope or your project's going to be. When I say technically, yes, when we were looking at kind of a large bond a few years ago, just as an idea, we could have an idea where we're going to spend $7 million, but we may not only spend the first $2 million in the first year and then spend the other subsequent years. I can't remember the year time frame, but I think it's within the structure of how you do the bond. It's a while ago when I was at the last city I worked for, we did do a revenue bond, and it was 5 years for us to spend the money because we had to do a new treatment plant and we had other sewer infrastructure to put in. So we had a length of time to do it all before we had to, you just didn't have to build it all at once. You can also structure it where you pass a resolution, you start moving towards something and you can capture costs. For instance, we'll use Trailhead example, and let's say you're going on to a more design phase of what you want to do, but you're not ready for the bond yet. You can pass a resolution to capture those costs and roll that into a bond for a later date. So
basically you pay yourself back with the bond.
Yeah.
So do you have to take, if you apply for the bond and take advantage of the low rates, do you have to take the bond amount immediately, or can you drag it out a little bit?
I have to get you some more details. So let me answer your question. I believe you can, when you say drag it out.
Like you said, there's a planning phase, there's a.
Tapping into it when you need it.
Exactly, right, kind of like a line of credit. A draw.
Yeah, let me look into that particular question you're asking for, because you usually, when you go out for a bond, you usually know what you're going to do, and then it's a matter of when does the bond actually, or when's the debt service payments actually will kick in. So, because
no, and I want to frame the question right. I would for sure want to put it to a project, but like you said earlier, it could take some time to go through the design phase, through the engineering phase, and so on and so on before you can actually use the bulk of the money. So that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, no, I know where you're going. I just have to refamiliarize myself or ask. I'll get some information to you by the next council meeting regarding how, if what you're proposing or what you're saying in relation to, okay, we do apply for this bond, we're not ready for the project, it's going to be done in 3 phases, and it will take us, just say 5 years to get to the point where we're fully utilizing all the funds. So
we want to lock in the rate today.
But we do want to lock in the rate, yes. Got that.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Best of every world.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I think we're good to go on to your
Okay.
next one if you are.
All right, next slide, please. Okay, so this slide really kind of, if we can just, I have other slides for these other topics highlighted in yellow. I didn't anticipate we were already going to talk a little bit about the CFP 21-22 projects. but, if there's any other questions, I guess, but, some of these questions are gonna be recurring from here on out, I guess. Do we want the project? What's our budget? How are we paying for it? So on and so on. So it kind of goes back to do I need a new house? So, any questions on this slide from anybody? I think we've already talked quite a bit about the existing CFP, plan. I have a couple questions, but go ahead.
Okay, got everyone first, and then Annie. Go ahead, Councilmember Langford. Uh-oh. I think he turned this off instead of hitting the end button. Hold on. Is he coming back? There he is.
Sorry about that, guys. What I would like to see, Phil, is these questions, these sets of questions that we've now seen twice. Do we want the project? Yeah, check it off, move on, et cetera, et cetera. How are we paying for it, et cetera? Those questions we need to keep before us anytime we're talking about a capital project, okay? Or really any project. So the same elements will have to be answered. And we can do the same thing when we're talking about voting for term limits. Okay, we say, do you want it? Yeah, okay, move on, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that we need to find some way of getting this thing printed off, sent to all of us and taped to the front of our computers, okay? So when we get to our meetings, we're all in agreement that this is the manner we're going to go down the list. Okay, we're not going to chase rabbits. We're not going to be a lot of what ifs. Okay, it'll be narrow in scope, which is going to direct us and funnel us to a final decision much faster. So I appreciate you taking care of this and that you're bringing it up, but I would like to see each one of those questions printed out and sent to us so we can make sure that this is what we're going to follow.
That sounds great. Okay, Annie, I think you had your hand up.
And I think Odin said it better than, I just want to echo what Odin said essentially, because I really like the questions. Do we want the project? I think that's the fundamental thing. Is it something that we think is good for the city, something that we think the citizen will want? And then let's figure out the other pieces of it, because I think we get kind of wrapped up at the back end when we haven't really identified the front end and whether we whether it's a good project for the city. So thank you again. And if there's a way for us to have this on the agenda when we talk about things or when we're doing our workshops on these individual topics to really guide our discussion, I think that'd be helpful.
Yeah, maybe just the bottom of the agenda page or something would have these questions. So anyway, thank you.
Yeah, and if I may jump in real quick before we get back to it.
Semi-senior moment.
Yeah, semi-senior moment. I'm not quite there yet, but I've got my ARP card. Oh, yeah, so I know what I was going to say. You know, so many times when we get in these discussions, we end up trying to design it before we've even decided what the budget is. And I really appreciate kind of putting all of this in perspective. So we need to remember that going forward with our discussions. Councilmember Stevers.
I'll agree completely with what you're saying, Madam Mayor, that sometimes we tend to design it before we know what the budget is. But I also want to remind council that on some of these projects, you don't know what you don't know. And so sometimes there needs to be some sort of a design type process at the beginning to understand what are the options. And so we can start picking and choosing and understanding the wide range of a scope. So I just want to be careful that, you know, if somebody were to say, hey, we want to put a baseball field in across the street. Yeah, guys, baseball field sounds good, 100 grand. That's the budget. We have no idea what that costs off the top of our head versus maybe identifying at least a square footage and getting an engineer's estimate. Maybe that needs to be part of the conversation before we start picking what our budget is. So anyway, just to throw it out there that you don't know what you don't know. I like this, but maybe we just need to split this into two conversations sometimes. But I also agree with not getting wrapped up into, I really like Phil's example of let's not get wrapped up into what color the house what the exterior of the house paint is going to be when we haven't even decided whether or not we're going to build a house. So, so it would keep us a little bit more on track going forward.
Okay.
So I have a couple questions. I don't know who's best to answer, but as I look at this CFP plan, at the top of it, it says 21 through 26. So at some point here, can we lose 2020 in our column?
Every year it rolls over. Every year it rolls over to the next. It's a 6-year capital facilities plan. So every year it rolls
So if it
over.
was in 2020, it's carried into 2021.
Right, so I guess my question is, do we still need to, it was hard to condense this down to paper size, so I'm wondering, do we need I mean, has the column always been there? And if it has, what's the purpose of it if we're pulling the funds to the upcoming year?
So 2020 is gone,
So
it should be showing 2021. I'm looking at that.
Right, well,
Yeah.
so for 2021, when the 2021 to 2026 capital facilities plan was prepared in 2020. We always show the existing because at times we have funding for projects that don't get completed for a variety of reasons. They may be partially completed, in which case we have to roll over funds. And so we try and be transparent with council to say, hey, this was funded for this year, but it didn't get done. We think it should go into 2021. Or like a great example would be the irrigation system at Pavilion Park. So it was funded in 2020, and the installation project began in 2020, but part of that, a significant part of it, is actually occurring in 2021 as they wrap it up. And so that's just trying to communicate to council that these projects, that what's happening and what we roll over. And it also gives us an opportunity to share with council what staff is working on and what staff can handle based on existing staff capacity. Now, you always have the option of adding more staff to complete your priorities, but at the end of the day, there is a limit as to the capacity we have with our given staff at any given time, if that makes sense. So that's part of the juggling process, is what is our capacity to deliver the project.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So any projects, the way I understand what you just said, is any projects that haven't been completed in that current year will stay on our capital facilities plan and roll over into the following year for finalization. So is it fair to assume then that any projects that were 100% completed in the budget year are taken off this list?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Dunn, you have a question?
Hey, just that I appreciate actually the visibility to the prior year for scope and scale magnitude. To understand prior year action, delivery, both undelivered and delivered, at least in magnitude, helps in thinking about scope and scale in that forward set. So I appreciate the presence of the column.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead, Phil.
Yeah, thank you. Another suggestion I'd like the council to consider or have discussion on is, like I said earlier, commented earlier on our police fleet. Many of us didn't know until a few weeks ago what the age of them are and what the miles were. I'm wondering if that should be part of our fleet equipment asset management, along with, I'm sure there's some trucks from streets, from Jen's department. There may be some other bigger ticket items that, as the mayor asked, the rolling stock, anything that has wheels that we have to replace because it wears out or ages. I wonder if we should have this on this facility plan.
Yeah, I think, Ellie, go ahead.
The police vehicles are in the pink area, Phil, under Liberty Lake Police Department, PC 17, PC 16. It's, who owns it? How many, let's see, when it's scheduled.
What page are you on?
I'm on page 3 or 4.
Oh, you're on the other spreadsheet. What's the project number?
Row number 127.
Yeah, I have it as 876, 877, 878, 879.
And I
So we
think
do have
Jen
a
keeps her
complete-
track of hers in the asset management tool as well.
Okay,
So they're in a couple different places.
so you're saying those are police vehicles?
Yeah, LLPD stands for Liberty Lake Police Department.
PC08, PC09, PC10. Thank you. Okay, I guess okay, so those are police cars. But the numbers we have budgeted, $1,000.
They're not for replacements, they're for maintenance. And so what I hear you saying is, we need to look at our rolling stock and put a forecast into the replacement of that vehicle.
Correct, the vehicle itself.
Yeah. Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
I'm sorry, but this program that we got a couple of years ago that Jen is operating with all of our equipment, that type of stuff, don't we have that in there?
I'll have to ask Jen to answer.
Okay,
Yes, we have a fleet rotation plan that goes out between 4 and 6 years at any given time, and it's actually part of the budget when the budget's approved. But I can get that out to you all again, and we do that. We anticipate what the lifespan is of our equipment and our fleet, and then when we anticipate turning it over.
Right, okay, thank you.
And I don't know if Chief got his audio working, but I know Chief Asmus was tracking with a fleet rotation on a regular basis, and I believe Chief Simmons has taken that over. It's just a matter of getting it into, as line items into the capital facility plan, if that's appropriate.
Just generically, we've been rotating about 2 police cars a year.
Right.
Yeah.
For the last 8 to 9 years.
Totally understand. I just, as I'm digging into a CFP plan, it just seems to me that we should not have maintenance items on here. We should not have radios on here. They're $800. We should have vehicles. We should have anything over, I don't know, pick a number, $20,000.
It has a life more than,
That has a lifespan of 2 to 5 years, right? All these other smaller items, I would expect that the department heads would manage on a separate inventory list of who has them and how they're maintaining them and so on and so on, because it comes out of their budget, right?
I think that's something we can take up later on with the, when we're looking at updating and revising our financial policies. Those are good points, so I'll make note of them.
I think it also lends itself to our computers, our phones,
Yeah.
a whole host of things that don't necessarily have to be in here.
Well, that's what I'm driving at. It would cut our document down by 3 pages.
But there are certain reasons why we have to have certain things on the capital facilities plan, grants, things like that. So, yeah, but definitely, Mike, could you do me a favor and take over the meeting for a minute while I go get my cord, because my computer just shut off.
Absolutely. Did you want to go on to the next slide?
I think we have some questions.
Oh, I'm
I had
sorry.
a question, actually, if I could throw. This is Dan, if I could throw a question. Yeah, quick one to RJ. Does GASB offer any guidance as to what's fitted for capital expense versus operating expense?
Yeah, they do have some guiding items on there, but they don't get necessarily into the specifics. We at one point a few years ago were not tracking computers and equipment on the capital facilities plan. And that was the desire of a past council, kind of like we want more detail. What are we turning over? So we started adding these things on there because we wanted transparent to know when we're transitioning these items out. So there was one time in the past where we were just looking at big ticket items. And so that's where we need your guys' guidance. What do you want to see on that capital facilities plan? We need to track it somewhere else. So
Thanks.
Okay. So, no other for you. Want to go ahead and do your next slide, Phil?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Next slide, please. So this slide really was just, I was hoping to get an update on progress update, completion date, where we are cost to date, anticipated future costs, maybe just up to the latest and greatest of where we're at with that project. But I think we may have touched on some of it, if anybody has anything to add.
So Ben, maybe you could jump in on schedule and scope?
Certainly. So it was a big day yesterday because we submitted for the funding request, which is kind of a big milestone. That means all the design effort, all the quantities, all the cost estimates and everything are now submitted to WashDOT through funding. So that keeps us on target for our April 26th advertisement date. And then so once we advertise there in May, we'll get the bids back and be able to make a decision to know what that project is going to look like. But as far as cost to date, RJ can probably speak to exactly what we've spent to date right now. But we've still been tracking really close on our estimates from what we had months ago.
Yeah. So year to date, and I will get you the exact number, but we're into about a little over 1.6 million for design. We have other costs that includes the land purchases that are also reimbursable. So I think we're a little over $1 million there. Then we have the 1.2 million appraisal. So we do have a cover page that I'll send out that will summarize where we think our expenditures are right now and what we still have left.
Great, thanks, RJ. Any other questions? There you go, Councilmember Langford.
Thank you. RJ, these expenditures that we've already had, can we file for reimbursement on those?
Yes, we can. And that is one thing, since we're finishing up the design, is to submit that documentation to the county for reimbursement for that phase.
Thank you very much.
Go ahead, Phil.
So RJ, one specific question I have on this is, the goal is to apply for TIF for the 6 mil that we've committed to towards the project. How do we handle anything over that?
Over the 6 mil? So it would still all be eligible for TIF and LIF funds if it goes over. So we would be asking for more. But we won't know that number until when the project's more finalized. So as we're working with WashDOT, they're going to give us updates. If it looks like something is going over, that's when we have conversations and talking. But there's a lot of the complication, not complication, the complexity of it is there's 3 projects within that 26 million. And we believe, or we know, that Barker and Harvard are coming in at budget or under budget. We don't know what the estimate is going to be on the Kramer. So I mean, we're optimistic that we're not going to run into that overage of 6 million. That is not anybody's goal. WashDOT doesn't want to maybe relive what happened about 8 years ago with the roundabout. So we're doing our due diligence and talking. So if there's any overages, that's where we're talking, but it would still be eligible for reimbursement through the TIF and LIF because it's still an eligible project.
And I think another thing I'd like to add to you, RJ, is there has been an extensive amount of effort into investigating any sort of foreseeable issues that we might run into during construction. So this includes finding all the utilities, locating things well in advance, probably up and above what we could have gotten away with design, talking with agencies and making sure we're coordinated well ahead of time if there's any sort of potential conflicts there, discussing right-of-way acquisition, environmental issues. We've really gone to great lengths to make sure that we're predicting these as close as we possibly can. And so the biggest wild card right now, I think, is when the bids come back to understand where we land there.
Okay, Councilmember Langford.
Yeah, RJ, one of my final questions is that why I asked about the reimbursement as we move forward, instead of lumping it all at the end, is wouldn't that put us back into, if we've spent 3 so far and got 3 back before the rest of it was due, wouldn't that kind of put us in a revenue neutral position, which would also improve our cash flow in case something does go over that we weren't expecting?
Yes, yeah, and so it would put us in a revenue neutral and get the cash back to us sooner. Yes.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
I believe in the past, if my memory serves me correct, is that we talked about there was gonna be some additional dollar amount spent, like once the bridge is done for landscaping on both sides, if I remember correctly, but also the close to $500,000 we paid for that acre of land corner, that was not in our wheelhouse when we first started, correct?
Yeah, that was unanticipated for.
Well, no, we knew we had to design for that leg of the intersection. The cost of that is being tracked
Right.
as a credit towards us when we purchased it. We did not know the value of it.
Right.
And we were at one time evaluating whether or not we could omit that south intersection.
Right.
And the consensus is that no, we prefer not to. So we moved forward with the negotiations and the negotiations completed. So there was a point in time where the project was tracking high. We were trying to do what's called value engineering to
Right.
save money.
Yeah.
And we evaluated not doing that intersection. And then after further discussion and evaluation, we decided we did want that intersection. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I think the important thing is for us to realize that all of us are concerned where, if it is 6 million or whatever it is, where it's coming from. Because wherever we draw it means we can't use it for something else. I think we have to keep in mind is it looks like we're probably in a savings of a little over $1 million right now in some areas. So even if we had to buy that land, which we did anticipate, for 500,000, we're probably still in pretty good shape.
Yeah, but I also want to emphasize, there was a budget for right-of-way acquisition. RJ reminded me it was in the $5 million range. When the original project was scoped, there was $5 million in there for right-of-way acquisition, and we didn't spend anywhere near that.
Okay.
So it all worked out. RJ, is there any further clarification you'd like to add? But really, our real estate acquisition came in below what the original budget was for the project.
Correct. Yeah, no, their budget, WashDOT's budget was high when it came to the right of way. We were able to bring it in much less. That helps the overall project, gives us some latitude on the rest of the items. So after I was looking back at my notes, it does look like right now we'll submit to the county for reimbursement lift. It's going to be in the range of about about $2 million for design and for the land. And with the appraisal in there, it does look like our anticipated funding match for the construction is just a little bit north of $2 million. But if to Councilmember Langford, let's get the reimbursement in for that first section and get that money back, then your cash flow is, your exposure, at least cash flow wise, is much less. So.
And just a reminder, I know many of you do remember this, but some may not, and that is we are in it for $6 million, even if the budget comes in low.
Right.
And still, our contribution towards the project is $6 million.
Get the most out of it that we can. Go ahead, Councilmember Follier.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. RJ, from the time that you apply for tip and lift, what do you normally see as an average time for turnaround to get your funds back?
Orchard took about 4 months. So I'm going to estimate that it would take about 4 months for this one as well. But it's pretty straightforward.
It's not years, it's months.
No, months.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments before we move on? Not seeing any.
Okay, next slide. Okay, here we go. What you'll see on the next handful of slides is basically the same question. Kind of goes back to my example earlier on building that house. So whoever wants to start, do we want the project?
All right, so yeah, so the first question before us, discussion on do we want the project? Mayor Pro Tem?
Well, I believe that's been long established, yes. That horse is way out of the barn.
I guess I should rephrase my question. Is there anyone who doesn't?
No.
Okay, fair enough. Can we identify if it is broken or is it not?
Broken.
Mayor Pro Tem?
That's been broken. That's been established.
Councilmember Kurtz?
Okay, yeah.
Councilmember Kurtz, we can't hear you.
So that broken, the ADA compliance and all of the things that we listened to in the presentation, yes, it does need to be addressed.
Councilmember Dunn.
Hey, my perspective is we probably should consider the projects that are in a set in totality for each of these questions first. That is to say, I'd like to apply a similar mechanism to each one of the projects we previously have identified as a priority. I believe in considering one to the finite end of this detail is a little bit short-sighted or may preclude decision-making regarding the other items in the list.
So what are you asking, Dan? I'm sorry.
Is it possible that we consider the question, do we want the project, and apply it each to the, gosh, it looks like there's 15 in the initial, I'd say, capital facilities plan.
So
And then subsequently move on with, is it broken, and so forth.
Yeah, so answer the same question for each of the projects, then move to the next question for each of the projects, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Oh,
I think that gives context and recognition of all that we're thinking of.
okay.
Different approach. Councilman Woodruff, you had your hand up.
Thank you. It's working. I have to say it is broken. I did not know until I had the tour last week how badly broken it is, but just the ADA requirements alone puts us, I think, in a bad position with that facility. And given that Palenque's is going to be moving out, if I were a restaurant owner, I wouldn't move into that facility. So I would agree, it is broken.
So taking Dan's suggestion, maybe if we can, I think it's suitable to maybe answer the first and second question for each one, and then come back to the detail if everybody seems amenable to that. Okay, good. So then you want to go to the next one. We'll answer the first two questions. I'll be keeping track too.
Okay, if I can, Mayor, just,
Yeah.
I have a couple comments on
Yeah,
is
sure.
broken. For me specifically, building, I think, is most likely broken, given its age, given what we're doing to keep it up, keep it functional to this date. And two, I think the other part is the driving range netting is broken. So those are the two things I'm going to focus on as we move forward with the discussion. Thank you.
All right, your next one, City Hall improvements. So kind of show of hands, maybe on this one to start and then discussion. So City Hall improvements, which included a little bit more detail on it, expanding the council chambers.
So we're not talking changing or maintaining the facility with roofing and systems. What we're talking about is kicking out the council chambers and expanding it. Is that correct?
Yes.
Bill?
In my mind, it's the maintenance part of it too.
Okay.
Oh, so we do have a line item in the capital facilities plan for expanding the chambers. So I believe that's what that line item is for. So
Improvements to me is where you're changing or improving the facility.
Okay, so yeah,
Maintenance
so
is
extending the chambers.
So, I'm sorry to draw the distinction, but there is a
Yeah, no.
maintaining is maintaining what you have, improvements is improving what you have.
Fair enough.
all right, Councilmember Kurtz.
So I think this fell maybe a little bit further down on our prioritization list. And so I'm wondering, the order of how we're talking about things. Because does that make sense? I mean, I feel like it was Trailhead and then it was the library if we go by our prioritization. And so
I think it's worth taking each one as a standalone to answer the first two questions. Do we want it? Is it broken? And then from there, maybe we can filter it down. Does that make sense?
Well, I think it does.
So
But
barring anything else, do we want this? If we're in a vacuum on each of these projects, do we want that? That's kind of how I was thinking about it.
I think there might be a difference too. And I mean, so if we're talking about City Hall improvements, we're talking about pushing out the council chambers. We're not talking about getting a different City Hall, which is what we have talked about. Does that make sense? I think we need to be clear on what we're asking. So, can you guys not hear me? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, you're good.
You can hear me?
Yeah, you're good.
I'm good, okay. So we've talked about relocating to a different city hall. But as far as council chambers was something that was way down on our list. So I'm just in the prioritization piece. So I'm,
Well, so do we, so I think they're two different issues. So maybe we answer the question for each scenario, either expanding or a new one. I do see Councilmember Seaver's hand up.
I think Councilmember Kurtz brings up great points. I'm not sure what exactly City Hall improvements means here, but I will say that I don't know if this has been shared with all of council yet or what else has been communicated, but there was an idea that popped up during the facilities tour that I happened to be on, what was that, last week or the week before? Councilmember Woodruff was there, Councilmember Langford was there, and Councilmember Kennedy. I'm not sure if you were there at this point when we went through City Hall, but something that may bump this up on our priorities is I don't know if there's still a potential of using some of the COVID relief dollars to help fund some of these City Hall type improvement projects, like expanding the City Council chambers. That would increase the capacity of that room. If we're stuck at 50% capacity for a while, we don't know if that's going to be the case or not, but if we're getting essentially free dollars to do these things, again, that started to bump it up on my priorities pretty quick. And the other part that was interesting is just how limited on office space we start being, and especially as employees, city staff are concerned about shared office spaces and those sorts of things. If there's potentially relief dollars out there that can help fund that. I don't know what the scope of this project looks like right now. If it weren't for COVID relief dollars being in this mix, I would say, do we want the project? Yeah, I kind of want it. I'm a little bit worried about the term want versus need. So that's a shout out to you, Odin. But I'm a little bit concerned about the term want versus need. Yeah, I want it. Is it broken? My quick reaction to that is no. City Hall is not broken, and so will it be broken in 2 to 5 years? I have not heard from Katie or city staff that there's any sort of a 2 to 5 year timeline on City Hall being broken. But again, if we consider current circumstances today with COVID, and we consider potential of COVID relief dollars, yeah, I'd say it'd be great to expand the city council chambers and allow more citizens to come in. If we get free dollars out of it, great. So anyway, it makes it really tough to prioritize a project if we don't know that. I don't know that any of us do though. So
I'll go to Councilmember Langford and then Councilmember Kurtz, and I'll jump in with a quick comment.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to point out that this title, just as it sits before you on this slide, is a prime example of why we get buried in weeds before we ever get to the landing zone. Okay. City Hall improvements. I could go down the line and everybody on this council will have a different idea of what's being spoken of. Okay. So we don't know. So this shouldn't even be in front of us. All right, that's number one. Shouldn't even be there because whoever wrote it doesn't know either. Okay, so if you know what the improvements is, do you want City Hall improvements? One, expand the council chamber, put in air purifier exchanger. Then you can say, yeah, we like that part of it. Is it broken? Yes, it is, because we need a new air exchanger. How are we going to budget? Well, we got to look in to see if the COVID dollars will cover that or not. Okay? But to go back with just the generic City Hall improvements, this is nothing but just spending our time and truly wasting the time at this point. So if we're going to continue to do this and try to get to some decisions, we need to pinpoint these a little better, I believe.
Now, I don't have my budget book in front of me. It's in the office. but I do believe we have pretty good descriptions of each of these. There were descriptions that go with each one of those line items in our budget book. So Katie, if you've got that in front of you, what does it say for City Hall improvement? Because I don't have my book in front of me.
Project number 13, I think, and the currently approved capital facilities plan is the closest match.
Thanks, Dan. Well, Andy, we'll get to you after Katie.
Find it.
Yeah.
Why, I don't have that.
Dan, do you have that up in front of you by any chance?
Yeah, it's right here.
City.
Whoever's got it. Mayor Pro Tem, you want to read it? If you've got
Yeah,
it.
the dollar amount for 2020 was $30,845. There was nothing in here for 21 on.
What was the description? There's a detailed description for each one of our line items.
I'm sorry,
in the budget book.
I do not have that.
The description was council chamber recording hardware. There is no other adopted capital facilities plan item with the word council in it.
Thank you, Dan. Councilmember Kurtz.
So I like the exercise of asking about the project. I like the questions that we're asking, but my suggestion would be that we go off of the list that we already have. We have the list in the PowerPoint that Lisa provided to us earlier. And those are the things that we already did the work, all of us together prioritizing where we wanted to focus our energy. So I'm wondering if we can still do the exercise that Phil put forward, but put it forward where we've already done some of the work with the list that Lisa has already done the work on. Does that make sense?
So Phil, we're just looking at, I'm assuming it's the second slide that we have, where we've got trail facility upgrade, which we already talked about, library facility upgrade, expand City Hall meeting room. So on Lisa's slide, it has, more details. So I'm assuming that's where what you started with.
Exactly.
So if we can, I don't know, maybe some jumping around.
The purpose of this slide goes back to what Andy said, to maybe answer the question, is City Hall adequate for us today, 5 years at build out? Is it adequate the way it is right now? Is it big enough? Is it in the right location? When City Hall improvements, not necessarily the physical building.
Right.
So maybe I reworded City Hall improvements. It should have been, are we happy with City Hall?
Well, so the project name on Lisa's list that when we went through our prioritization matrix says expand City Hall meeting room. So that's, to me, if we're going down our priority list, as Councilmember Kurtz pointed out, that's what we need to be talking about. Does that make sense to everybody?
Sure.
Okay. So unless there's any objections, if we can, when we're talking about City Hall improvements, we're using this list. So let's answer the first two questions with regards to expanding the City Hall meeting room. And honestly, where I was going to jump in after Councilmember Stevers was discussing use of COVID dollars or not. In my mind, we're not talking about how we're funding it at this point. We're taking a look at the first two questions. Whether we have the money or not is another question that will be answered later, or where the money's coming from. But as it stands today, with what we know, do we want the project of expanding City Hall council chambers, period? To me, that's the question.
Right.
Councilmember Stevens.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I'll respectfully disagree. If you told me we have $3 to expand City Hall, it bumps up my priority list quite a bit.
Well, we're not putting these in order right now, though. Do we want it or not? And is it broken? So, I mean, in my mind, I don't have a vote in this anymore. I get that, but in my mind, expanding City Hall, I don't think there's a need. And that's just my personal opinion. And is it broken? Being here, in my opinion, it's not broken. Again, I don't get a vote, but I'll put my opinion in. So how do others feel about that? So those are the two questions we're trying to answer.
But I thought if we are at a point that we are saying, do we want the project or not? And oh, by the way, there might be federal funding or state funding on the table to cover the project, and there might be a timeline associated with those. I'd say we may want to look at it a little bit more serious versus all of us saying, not broken, don't fix it, move on, let's not talk about it. If we don't
But if it's not
cover some of those
broken,
topics, we may pass it up.
we have the money here. Are we gonna improve something if we don't need to, just because the money's there?
Right.
So
Yes.
that's where I'm looking at, where we don't need.
Absolutely, I would.
Oh, okay, so, all right, we have to agree to disagree on that, because I see if we're spending, say, $100,000 to expand the council chambers when we don't need to, and we could use that $100,000 to help some local businesses or replace the air exchange in here. So to me, the dollars need to be kind of taken out of it for right now. Again, just my.
Depends on what those dollars are earmarked for. So just want to make sure if dollars are available, we're talking about how we could use them.
Mayor Pro Tem, you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I think what's important for us to keep in mind in this subject and some of the others we're looking at is that we're in a unique position. We're a debt-free city with a lot of land left, so we're going to have growth over a period of time, which is great for us, great for the sales tax, great for things of that sort there. I think what's important for us to take consideration, and I'll use this building for example, is that does it need to be done something right now? Probably not, but we know as time goes on and build out, it will be. So instead of waiting until we've outgrown the building and then get into a scurry to try to repair it, I think it's good for us to look at, do these repairs when we have the time to do it, the money to do it, and therefore when growth comes along, we're prepared for it. And I have to go back to Trailhead. We've been dealing with Trailhead since as long as I can remember. And in that time, it keeps deteriorating. The net's deteriorated, the building deteriorated, all of that's deteriorated. You know, we established we need to do something. We just didn't get it done. So I look at this building the same way. I look at the police department. I look at all these type of things. Do we need it right now? Probably not. But some of these things we will need in the future. Maybe that should be a priority to start looking at how do we need it? What improvements do we need? How we're going to pay for it? How it's going to be utilized? Because it's great to be able to grow when you have the space. It's miserable to grow when you don't have the space because it becomes anti-productive and it costs us money and time for our employees. Thank you.
Councilmember Kirk.
I'm just kind of going. I'm not muted. Can you guys hear me? I don't know if.
Sorry, your name's blocking your part of your face, so sometimes I can't tell if you're talking.
I'm in my, anyway. I'm just wondering if we can go back to, we already did the work to prioritize this. We've already picked 16 things and we put them in order that we thought were most important. So can we talk about Trailhead? Number 2, can we talk about the library? Number 3, can we talk about the Rocky Hill shade structure? Can we go in order? Because I think we're kind of meandering all over the place, but we already did the work. We already prioritized what the council felt was the most important. So I think that my perception of the spot that we're at now is we've prioritized. When do we want to do the project? Or not? I mean, there's the not part too, but I feel like it's getting complicated and maybe it doesn't need to be. Dan's clapping.
I don't have a copy of that, so.
Councilmember Langford.
Yes, just to remind council that just because we say, no, we're not interested in doing something and it gets removed from the list, doesn't mean that if somebody bequests money for a certain project that we can't go back and revisit it and say, yes, this now becomes more viable, more interesting, and we can move forward with it. So just because we move it now doesn't mean it has to stay on the side forever.
Agreed. So, Councilmember Ford, we want to.
Sure. So I guess we'll start over. No. Okay.
All right. So Phil's got a copy.
I just have a comment.
Yeah.
I think the intent of the approach is to find out, even as we look at our priority list and the different scores that we've all given it. To me, some are important to me, some are important to others. So I guess the intent of the questions here are, is there a tolerance, is there a desire, a majority desire to even do these projects. Because if it's only one or two people that want them, then let's identify that.
Well, and that's where the prioritization list comes in, because when we did that matrix last year,
Excuse me, he has a.
oh, it doesn't show because of my background. That's where these numbers and the prioritization scores came from, so we've already addressed those
What I'll
different.
do then, Mayor, is I'll ask these exact same questions, and I'll go off of this priority list here, and we'll charge on. Fair enough?
Sounds good.
So I think we've already asked the first two questions on Trailhead.
Yep.
Of the library, same two questions. Do we want the project? Is it broken?
All right, comments. Councilmember Kurtz and then Councilmember Dunn.
I do want the project. I liked what, when we had the library director talk about in 5 to 10 years. So I think as far as timing of that, I don't think it's broken today, but we did do the evaluation of it, and I would like to start investing in it as we've talked about.
Okay. Councilmember Dunn next, I think, and then Councilmember Woodruff.
Sure. Yes to the project, and yes to it's broken based on the evaluation that has been paid for in professional services.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Woodruff.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with what Councilmember Kurtz said. I think we should really take a good look at the assessment that was done in 2019. I've been looking at it myself again just to kind of refresh my memory. I do think we need to do things, so yes, we need the project. I don't think the library is broken. I think it needs help right now. I think we need to see what libraries are going to look like in the next 5 to 10 years. We have a new library director, we're going to have to help with that. But if you look at the short-term recommendations from that assessment, there's a lot we can do fairly quickly just like we did in the children's area with the new shelving. New shelving and new furniture can make a big difference. I don't think it's broken. It might be broken in 5 years. I don't know, because I don't know what libraries are going to look like. But I think there are some things that we could do short-term that wouldn't cost a whole lot of money. Those shelves in the children's area cost $15,500. So I think we could really do a lot in a short amount of time and kind of save the big discussion for later. Thank you.
Councilmember Langford.
I concur with Councilman Woodruff and Kurtz.
Thank you. Councilmember Stevens.
I'd also agree with that. I do want the project. I do not think the library is broken. And my recollection of the assessment was it won't be broken in 2 to 5 years, but long term, we need to seriously assess this.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem. Councilmember Dunn. Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, I would like to say on this, the library. I brought some physical things to show tonight. This represents just the library and the assessment. We spent $37,000 for this, and this council has not spent 1 minute on analyzing that. What I'm hearing is that all of us have looked at it to one degree or another, and we seem to grab things that are important to us, and we say, well, that's why we need to do this. In reality, if you look at that report and look at the whole thing, and also the exit interview that these individuals gave us, there's recommendations there that have never come up in a discussion. And until this council takes the time to sit down and look at exactly what we spent money on, we're just shooting in the dark. We're literally shooting in the dark. We spent money and we've not analyzed it and leaving to look at their recommendations. Thank you.
Councilmember Dunn, and then Councilmember Kurtz.
Dan.
Okay, sorry, lost track. Go ahead, Councilmember Kurtz.
With respect to the library and the assessments, I think I'll speak for myself. I've read the report. I've attended the meetings. I've attended the work session that we had with Jocelyn presenting to us. So I don't want there to be an assumption that people aren't out there reviewing and doing their work, and that my recommendation is based on my assessment of the assessment and my interpretation of what I've heard in the meetings and everything. So I think that we haven't had a workshop maybe on it, but we are going to be having those if we prioritize them as projects. So I think that'll be the time where we, you know, kind of get into the weeds, but we've had presentations on it. So, yeah.
So it sounds so, go ahead, Councilmember Foyer, and then I don't know if you want to summarize if you want me to, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, no, I will, thank you. So, I'm a yes, I'm in favor of the project. I'm a no, it's not broken right now. I'm a yes, we need further discussion on the, how to move forward with it. Based on everybody's response, maybe we're not able to answer the other questions except for when we want to follow up for action on this. So why don't we set a time right now to decide that?
Okay.
Let me frame that in this
Sure.
way. How urgent is it? It's not broken, so it's not urgent, right? So is this a discussion for the next 90 days, or is it a discussion for the latter part of the year?
So my suggestion is going to be, let's keep a list, I can do that, of those things that we want to have further discussion on, and then let's relook at our workshop agenda. Maybe it's during their next meeting when we have a chance to put it all back together and figure out where that'll fit. Does that work?
No.
So we'll identify a date.
No? Okay, hand. So I think I had Mayor Pro Tem first, then Councilmember Langford.
Well, I was just going to make a comment, is I think we've all agreed, and many times we look at this, number one priority is trailhead. If we're going to be setting any dates to start analyzing anything, I think that is the priority. If we're going to be having workshops, that is it. The library is not broken. It's working fine. Could we expand it? Could we do some additional things there? Yes. But is it something we have to jump on right away? I don't think so. My only push is to analyze what we spent money for, is it? So do I think that could be maybe 90 days down the road? Sure. But for priority, for setting dates, is trailhead.
Got it. Councilmember Langford.
Yes, ma'am. We've answered the question. Is it broken? I mean, do we want the project? No. Okay, is it broken? No. So let's just move on. Okay, we don't need to set a date about anything with the library. If something comes up, we'll address it. But in the meantime, get it off of the capital facilities plan because it's a decision made.
Oh, okay, so maybe I misheard, because the consensus that I heard was everybody wants it, but not now.
Okay,
what I
Mary, we
heard.
can call it tomato or tomato, but it's not on, it doesn't need to be on the list. It's a done deal. That's why we have the questions. We ask if we wanted the project. If not, move on. We said no to it. Is it broken? Everybody said no except one. Okay, so let's get it off the board and move on.
Okay. Yeah,
How do
so
we
I
expect-
I apologize. I apologize, Councilmember Langford, but what I heard from most everybody was, yes, they want the project. But
not what I heard.
now. Those are two separate things.
Okay, let's take a vote on it and find out.
Okay, so
That's the
everybody
easy
who
way.
wants the project, raise your hand.
Let's reiterate what the project is, and we're on the same page. We're talking library, correct?
Yes, library. Raise your hand if you want the project. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. Say yes, but not now. Councilmember Severs.
I thought I want the project, but I don't think we need to be rediscussing it in 90 days because to your
Right.
point, Councilmember Langford, what I heard was we want the project. It's not broken. It won't, I won't say that we expanded on will it be broken in 2 to 5 years, but to me, this would be a great example of table it. And next time we do our prioritization matrix, which might be next year going into next year's retreat, then we rediscuss whether or not this project makes the list.
Any other comments? Councilmember Foyer.
Mayor, is this a place where we could put this topic under our unfunded projects at the bottom of our capital facilities plan?
That question's better asked of Katie at this point.
Yeah, this time there was no funding identified. The library does have a library capital fund
I understand.
that they use for shelving and a whole host of things.
But that's different, right?
Yeah, if it's not a priority to move forward now, then don't fund it and put it.
So we'll put it under our unfunded projects for future discussion.
All right, Councilmember Kurtz and then Councilmember Dunn.
Do we still have the upcoming budget amendment for saving up for the library, though? I think that was still coming up. It was pushed off from the last 2 meetings, I think. So we would,
Councilmember Dunn, I'll let you answer, because that was your ordinance.
Yeah, just that I'd ask that an ordinance establishing a capital fund for the library be pushed forward until we can have a more clear definition of our current library director. I just want to bring forward in clarity, are we talking about a structural change to the definition of our capital facilities plan? To be direct, I believe that unfunded simply means it does not have a dollar amount shown in a column. So to relocate as a row this to a different place, I don't think is necessary.
Right now it's listed as.
I would agree with that.
And it'll stay there, yeah. So it has TBD and it will stay that way. Okay. No other discussion. We'll move to the next one. Which,
Okay. Do you want to go back to Trailhead right now then?
Trailhead, set a date.
Let's go back to Trailhead. So we've all agreed that we go back to it. We've all agreed that we want it and it's broken. Is that fair? Did everybody agree to that? Yes? All right. Woo! Obviously, as has been identified earlier, more discussion on what do we want, what's the concept, budget, how we're paying for it, when do we want to execute it. So maybe the bottom question should be moved up in the list on when do we want to discuss it. Is that fair, or do you want to?
Yeah.
I don't see how we're going to get into the details of those other questions without more time.
right. Go ahead, Katie.
I was just gonna offer, on April 6th, there's a workshop at 6 PM on the top priorities coming out of this meeting.
Okay.
So that might be, April 6th might be the day that we do some follow-up on this. Is that too soon?
Is there, I would ask during that meeting, if we are following up on it at that meeting, or whichever meeting we follow up on the Trailhead, that somebody represent the options that were given to us, but in a much shorter, more concise version. Because there are people here who weren't here for that, and you know, Holly's brand new. So I think it's a good time to, what are you shaking your head at?
Trailhead is a very complicated project. There are many options that are being looked at. And to think that we're going to get into a discussion in a 6 o'clock meeting and get anything accomplished is anti-productive. I believe we have to have a separate meeting, strictly a workshop on Trailhead, to start establishing what do we want there, what do we need, and what has been presented, and what things we do not want or we do want. That can't be done in the 6 o'clock.
Point taken. Councilmember Kurtz?
I was going to say something along the same lines of what Mike is saying, that I do think we need a more concentrated, something along these lines type of meeting. And I'm going to say something that's probably going to be unpopular, but I feel like with some of these projects, we might need to have additional special meetings to be able to get that done and get the regular city business done, unless the agendas are light coming up. But I'm happy to be a part of some longer workshops, or have the workshop in the meeting take longer. I don't know if that fits with other people's schedules, but I don't think an hour here and then an hour in 2 weeks and an hour in the next 2 weeks is going to get us very far. I think we'll repeat ourselves and not get the depth of the conversation that we need. Just also a reminder that our meetings are, recorded on there, and you could watch the presentation again, which would probably be beneficial for all of us if we want to have kind of pick up where we left off versus redoing that work.
Again, point taken. Councilmember Severs, then Councilmember Langford.
Thank you.
I'll just agree with both of you, but I'll remind council that, gosh, there were a few slides back that Phil had prepared for us, and it said something along the lines of parks last forever. Trailhead is very similar to a park environment. Trailhead is such a major project for the city. This is worth us taking extra time to do, and not try to cram into 1 hour. So I just want to agree with that and voice that this is a major project for our city, and is worth the extra time doing. But Annie, I'll capitalize on something you said too on the pre-recorded projects. Would it be fair, Madam Mayor, for us to ask staff to maybe forward council a link or maybe one or two relevant links to those presentations to help us prepare ahead of time?
Absolutely. Take that note. So we'll send the link
Thank you.
to both the minutes and the presentation and the recording of the meeting and any documents that went with it.
Assuming the rest of the council agrees in doing this in a special meeting and we pick a date tonight.
Mayor Pro Tem Kennedy.
Thank you, Mayor. I would propose for the council to consider this, is that on the April 6th, and this could be done at 6 o'clock as far as I'm concerned, is that at that point, we look at our calendar of when all of our workshops and stuff are coming up, when we can identify on the 6th, when we will have a workshop specifically on Trailhead. And we can set it on the calendar, and we know that's cast in stone. That's when we'll be talking about Trailhead and only Trailhead. No other things will be brought into our time frame.
Any other points, any other discussion? Councilmember Langford. And then Councilmember Severs.
Yes, ma'am. I would like to propose that because of the depth of this, I would be willing to sit in on a retreat that could be a day long, 2 days long, whatever, that would directly work on just the trailhead, okay? And that would give us a chance to hit it, have a lot of discussion on it, come to some conclusions and move forward. And that, I think that's a lot better than a couple hours here or there. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Sure. Councilmember Severs.
I would have proposed that we schedule time and meeting place tonight rather than even wait until April 6th. Wait till April 6th, it gets bumped out another couple of weeks or so on. So my hope would just be go ahead and get it scheduled while we're all together. And Councilmember Langford, I like your idea of let's at least make an assumption of how long this is going to take. It's a lot of details, and then figuring out how to finance it.
Yeah, so Katie's.
I'm looking at my calendar. Are we thinking an off Tuesday, the month of May, and off Tuesday, the month of June?
Because we already have some special meetings, I think, set up in April.
We do.
Hold on just a second, guys.
But we could have a retreat day on the 1st, 2nd, 4th, 5th, 7th, 8th.
So right now, May 11th and May 25th are 2 off Tuesdays in May.
That's not long enough.
Yeah. Or do
Oh,
we?
I'm sorry, Councilmember Langford, you're looking at Sundays, is that correct?
Yeah. I'm just looking at any date. I don't care. We pick whatever we pick, but that it's when we have the whole day to attend to this business and come up with a plan instead of stretching it over weeks that we forgot what we even discussed. That's all.
If you want to do it on weekends, that tends to be the better time, and Sundays I know are better for the majority. So there is May 2nd, May 9th, May 16th, May 23rd.
So can we, like we did for, I believe it was for this meeting, can we send out a quick doodle poll tomorrow so everybody can mark which, we'll put the days out there, everybody can reply which of those days are available, and we'll take it from there so that everybody has a chance to check their calendar. So we'll get the doodle poll out to everybody tomorrow for that, if that's acceptable.
Is there any reason
Okay.
that we bypass the month of April? Yeah.
We can look at April. Obviously, this Sunday is Easter, and that's really too close. But we've got we have 3 other Sundays in April we can look at. So we'll include both April and May, and have everybody note their availability.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Katie.
No problem. finish making my note here, so if you want to take the next step.
I think you have a question, Mayor.
Oh. So any other hands up?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Mike.
The guy to your right.
Yeah, well, I'm actually not
Look to
watching
your right.
you, I'm trying to watch on the screen. So go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, the thing I would really like to emphasize is that I'm really hopeful that all the council will be able to meet in one place. Tonight, this is the first time that I've been able to sit in a room with other council members and Katie and the mayor, and I'm here to tell you, this is effective. This is what I forgot about that we lost in the last year, is that being able to look across and see somebody else's eyes and see them shake their head and say, yeah, that's making sense, really is effective. So I think when we talk about Trailhead, the goal is going to be, we all need to be in the same room. We'll get a big room, but we need to be in the same room. Thank you.
I just have one question.
Go ahead.
Does it have to be on a Sunday?
No,
We could shoot for other days of the
Could it
week.
be on a Thursday or a Friday?
If, I would have to have more than a couple weeks' notice to do that.
Yeah, I guess I'd have to ask the council members that have a job, is there some flexibility that you have?
Fridays are actually more flexible for me, but we can, again, let's put the poll out and
Okay.
see what we can do.
Not before 10 on Sunday, not happening over here.
Yeah. Well, and the tournament will be over by then, so you don't have to worry about making room for basketball.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, moving right along. Rocky Hill Park shade structure. Same questions.
Yeah, so that one's already funded for this year. I don't know, it's
So-
moving forward as far as I know.
Oh, I'm sorry, I need to look at the dates. So we're all agreed that that's a go, yeah?
I don't think, what are you looking at, Katie?
Yeah, I'm looking at Rocky Hill improvements, I'm trying to find the shade structure.
Yeah, it's in there for $20,000 for 2021. It's pretty much a no-brainer in my mind.
Yep.
Anybody
already
object to moving ahead with? Yeah, we've already approved all of that, yeah.
Sorry,
That's okay.
move on to something. Do we really need to discuss public art?
It's already
Funded,
funded.
right? Orchard Park sound system, it's already
Funded.
funded. Okay, we're back to expand City Hall meeting room.
Good
So we're
night,
back to
everybody.
expand City Hall meeting room.
So I have a question
Sure.
that maybe Councilmember Foyer could help us understand when you're building your houses. Talk to us about the concept, maybe as it relates to Trailhead. If you were going to be a contractor for Trailhead, how would you approach that conversation with your client about the concept level of a facility as opposed to the details of how of the construction?
Oh, boy, you on the
I'm
spot.
putting him on the spot, because I think the information that you're gonna share with us is gonna be important for our council members to think of, what does the facility look like when we're done? What is the goal of the project? And what's the concept of the reconstruction, remodel, whatever?
Okay, well, every concept of structure has a design element to it and a price tag associated with it. So, obviously, you have to work within your means, live within your budget, or live within your means, right? So it's a huge undertaking to talk about the intricacies of design versus cost versus what's important to me or Holly regarding that facility. So, I don't know if there's any one good answer. There's no one good there's no one good equation that fits all with that building.
So it could be, what do you want the facility to do? Do you want it to be a pro shop? Do you want it to be a restaurant? Do you want it to be a banquet facility? Do you want it to have storage? Those are project scope that defines how the project will function when it's complete.
So for me, to start that conversation, when we talk about it, whenever we decide, it's gonna be about the building and the driving range. Because as you said earlier, the course is, when we've invested money into the course for irrigation, seems to be adequate. I don't think it's broken. So that's gonna be my focus when we talk about it.
All right.
I think you have questions there, Karen.
So there we go. I've got Councilmember Severs.
So I'll share what, in my architecture training, the process that we were typically taught was to go down the programmatic details section first. So, well, there's an 8-step process. It starts with what do you have, then it leads into what do you want, and then you start getting into details. And I think if we were to start going through a process of what do we want, exactly to your point, Katie, do we want a pro shop? I think the answer might be yes, since there's a golf course. There are going to be some obvious details like that, and then there are going to be some less obvious details, like do we want a restaurant? Now, do we want a nice restaurant, or do we want a little food shack? And a lot of us are going to be able to start formulating, do we want to put in the infrastructure for a nice restaurant, or the shell for a nice restaurant, where a restaurateur might be able to come in and build out what they want? Well, that's a different level of cost than we want to put in a little hot dog and hamburger stand for that just applies to the golf course. So I think there's probably a process that perhaps I don't know if we want to invite back the architects that worked on some of the conceptual designs that. Well, the point is we may want to bring in some sort of outside facilitation to walk through what that process looks like. Of what are we actually trying to do, or bring back the exact presentations we've already looked through without them. I don't know, Odin, but there is an order of operations that usually, at least an architect will work through with their clients to figure out what they need, budget. So I can say from the design standpoint, budget usually comes later, though to Phil's point, you have to be keeping budget in mind all along, and we all know that, or it's pretty easy to come up with a $20 million project. So, but figure out the program which you actually want, that there is a system for this, and I don't know who the right person to come facilitate is, but I do think it'd be valuable to have somebody facilitate that process.
All right, thanks, Councilmember Langford.
Yeah. With regard to Hugh's statement, I understand the desire to have somebody there to facilitate it. That's great. Okay. But the problem is that when you start bringing in the people who made the design, all right, they stop becoming the designer and the architect and start becoming the salesman. All right. And I don't even want to get involved in that. I don't want any part of it. There's nobody more capable than the 7 people on this council to say, what do you want to see there? Okay. Do you want the restaurant? Do you want this? Do you want that? We're the best people to say yes, 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 or no, don't want that. Okay. At that point, that's as much as we got to figure out right then, because we've come a long way if you get to that point where you can say, I want these elements. Then you go back and say, okay, now we need to start looking at a design and a budget for it. But I don't think anybody can do a better job than us to deciding what we want at that piece of property.
Yeah. And Councilmember Severs, you can go next. We'll comment that we will make sure that we have our golf pro there at that meeting, because there are obviously things from his perspective that are needed that we may not think of. Go ahead, Councilmember Severs.
And Odin, I agree with you. I think that we've gone through most of the design pieces. Maybe, or maybe ask you, are you talking about bringing out the designs that those architects already brought to us and starting to basically pick and choose elements from that?
That would be a start, my friend.
I agree 100% with you. At least bring that, start there. There's a lot of different things that we can pick and choose from, and then use that as a jumping off point.
Yep, good starting place.
I agree with you.
All right.
And I agree with you. I don't think we need that facilitated.
Yeah. Thank you.
Got it. All right. Next, go ahead, Phil.
On that concept, This is my first presentation to the group, so a strong learning lesson.
We're a tough crowd, aren't we?
I would ask, or I don't know if any one of us would want to facilitate it ourselves or we can manage it ourselves, but I would say it would be very beneficial, because there's 7 of us that have an input on this, that you forward here's my question I want answered, so we can have it prepared and ready to go for the group to be discussed. Instead of somebody trying to read your minds, forward your questions early on, so we can, so a plan can be put together for the discussion.
Do you want those to go to you, Katie, or Lisa?
Yes, please. And I'm going to piggyback onto what Phil just said. For us, I think it's important is, what do you want to do there? You want to eat? You want to take golf lessons? You want to golf? You want to hit balls? You want to park your car? You want to go to a banquet room? You want to join the women's club? I don't know. What do you want to do there? Because one of the things that came up when Staples Golf made the presentation was, I don't remember the name of it, but it was a different kind of golf. It wasn't
foot golf, it was something else.
It was a type of golf that.
Kiddies golf.
What was it?
It was kind of a kiddies golf.
Kiddies golf.
They use
So
big plugs.
The question that I have is there other things that you want to do at this building that we don't currently do there? And so that's an important question.
All right, well, we don't need to obviously answer that now. We'll get the questions to you, Katie.
Yeah.
We'll get the doodle pull out tomorrow with the choice of dates.
Yeah.
And, obviously with your public works background, I think, Katie, if we can rely on you to help facilitate,
I can facilitate.
that'd be great.
Okay.
Okay,
Perfect.
all right, next.
We're still on City Hall meeting room.
Okay, City Hall expanded council chambers.
Go back to the question.
We're back to the-
Project is broken.
Yep. So I guess show of hands, do we want it?
You asking yes?
Yeah, if you want, I would say, show of hands, just to start off the conversation, show of hands, who wants it, and then we'll take the question, is it broken? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 3 with regards to whether we want it, and then whether it's broken. So in my opinion, as it stands today, it's not. But are we talking 2 to 5 years? May it be or not? Mayor Pro Tem and then Councilmember Severs.
Yes, to reiterate, is it broken? No, I do not see it's broken. Do I see advantage to do the preventive maintenance and also construction, so we're prepared to build out? Yes.
Councilmember Severs, I think you had your hand up. And then Councilmember.
I'm going to say the opposite way. As of today, it's broken because council's not able to do it because our 50% capacity or whatever we could do doesn't house the citizens that would be in there today. Will it be broken in a year? I don't think so.
Well, and it's
At
a
build out,
technology
yes.
issue. It's why we can't. But so
That's
not.
a size issue. It's a room capacity issue for our average attendees, I believe.
Okay.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, sure, go ahead, Phil.
That's a great comment. At build out, it will be broken. So at what point between now and then do you think it'll be broken? Based on our population, based on, what do we base that on? I'm just, for future notes, that's all I'm asking.
Public meeting. Do we have adequate?
Are you?
Go ahead, Hugh.
I'm basing on just my experience 5 or 6 or 7 years ago when it was on average maybe 4 or 5 people in the room versus over the last year. I'm sorry, not last year, but the attendance we saw, say 2 years ago, where there were a number of nights that we had to add chairs and put more people in the hallway. And as we're growing, I think the city's growing more popularity, and we've made it a priority to try to get more communication out to our citizens, and that's putting more citizen involvement. I don't have a statistic, I don't have any data at all, but that's just it's just a feeling. Feelings are terrible decision makers, but it's a feeling of mine that there's more citizen involvement today than there was 5 years ago, or certainly more than there was 8 years ago when I joined council.
Very true. Councilmember Langford, then Councilmember Dunn.
You know, this particular project is worthy of being put off, okay? And the reason I say that is, let's take Trailhead, all right? And let's get moving on that. And let's see what develops from there, okay? Then we can come back and revisit some of these other projects. But let's see where we're going with, the consensus is where we want to go with Trailhead. And we may answer some of our own questions one way or the other.
Good point. Councilmember Dunn, you're next.
Yeah, I would say to want the project, yes. And is the council chamber broken? And I would look forward into the next planned council meetings and say we have no functional ability to gather either this council or the public. So I would say with reason that it is broken. I join that to the notion that the city's staff and administration is outgrown in the existing physical site. It extends beyond the council chambers itself. So in my opinion, it's not just the council chambers to take focus to, but it's also the operations of the city staff. Thanks.
Councilmember Kirk.
When I think about just expanding the city chambers out themselves, I feel like there's a bigger evaluation to be done of the city hall building cluster. That didn't come out right. That's a cluster of buildings. It's not a, anyway.
Move on.
Not what I meant. You see me turn it? That there are some opportunities for different ways to
We're never
organize.
going to forget that, you know.
So I think that while today it's not broken, I think that there's some opportunities to use that space better. And I was thinking the same thing that Councilmember Langford, that he had already iterated, that I think that once Trailhead is in its process, I'm wondering if, you know, having City Hall next to the Trailhead is, I'm just wondering how that's all going to play out. So I do think that it is going to need to be addressed, probably in the next 3 to 5 years, so we're ready for build out. But when I was there, I came home and I told my husband, I'm like, I really want to go organize City Hall. I think that there's some opportunities to change the way things are laid out and organized to make it more efficient, I guess. So I don't think it's totally broken. So, yeah.
Okay. So we've heard from a couple council members, you know, that, you know, if I am hearing correctly, kind of maybe cut our conversation tonight so we can focus on Trailhead and then regroup after that to go through the rest of the projects. Am I hearing, if I'm not hearing that correctly, somebody please correct me.
I have a comment.
At least City Hall.
So I'm hearing, yes, they want the project. It's not broken today, but it may be broken in 2 to 5 years. Is what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
I may be wrong, but that's what I thought I heard. So I would almost propose that we may not have a budget. We know what we want. We may not. What is our budget? We probably need a budget from somebody or a quote or something for the project. And we can talk how we're going to pay for it, but what year do we want to execute it? If it's going to be broken in 2 to 5 years, because this is a 6-year plan.
Yeah.
So can we agree tonight to put it on a year?
Yeah, maybe put it out 6 years and then pull it in as we get more information. Mayor Pro Tem.
I'm concerned if we're the consensus now that will be broken in 5 years. If we wait until 5 years and realize it's broken, then start putting the plan in to do something, the way we move, it'll be another 5 years before we get anything done.
Yeah.
So I would say that if we think it's going to be broken for sure in 5 years, let's be realistic in the next 12 months to put something in effect to look at what is necessary here. Because there, all we're doing is spending some time and effort to see what we need. So instead of getting to the point, oh my God, we have to do something, let's hurry and do something, we're forced to spend money we don't necessarily want to spend. So I'm not in favor of kicking it down the road 5 years. Thank you.
Okay, well, we can, I mean, we don't, go ahead, Councilmember Woodruff.
Thank you. Agreeing with what Mayor Pro Tem Kennedy said, I did not vote in favor of this, but as I'm hearing everybody talk, I'm thinking more and more, yes, as we build out, we are going to need more space. As a regular attendee of city council meetings, I could see how it grew just in the 3 years that I was attending. And one of the things to think about is in a year's time, we'll have a better handle on what this pandemic's going to look like too. Will we still be stuck at 50% capacity? I hope not. I'm ready to get back to a normal life. I'm vaccinated, but not everybody has. So going out 12 months and looking at this again, we'll have a better idea what the pandemic looks like. We'll have a better idea of what we're doing with Trailhead by then. Who knows? I mean, Phil, you're the construction guy here. Maybe the same person that does Trailhead could throw this in and we could get a discount.
Not on that piece of wood, though.
But there is sales tax.
So I think we should look at this in another year and get ahead of this because we will probably need it in 5 years, if not sooner.
Real quick, I think Katie had a comment and Councilmember
Just
Foyer.
real quick, and I really appreciate all the feedback because, yeah, there's nothing broken with our city council chambers, our city hall. I will be honest with you though, that when it comes to technology and the tea leaves that I see is that public meetings are going to be held hybrid, in person and remotely, and everybody from the school districts to the fire districts to the county commissioners, to city halls in the state of Washington. I don't see virtual meetings I don't see them going away. I see them becoming part of the norm, where in person and remote. Having said that, I'm not a technology guru, that's Todd, but our facility is challenged technically. And so maybe it's not so much brick and mortar improvements, it's technology improvements.
Yeah, and I think that's already on our radar.
Yeah, it's on our radar, and I think also with the relief dollars that Councilmember Severs mentioned, we should pay really close attention to that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Who do I have next? Councilmember Foyer.
Sorry, yeah, thank you, Mayor. I want to see us put it on the year. It's a capital facilities plan. It's a 6-year plan. We can always move it. We pull projects forward. We push them back. If we can put it on our, when do we want to execute? If we can pick a year, I'm going to suggest we split the difference. We say 2 to 5 years it may be broken, so maybe on year 3, 2024 is where we include this. And at a future meeting, we discuss how much. So that's the purpose of the capital facilities plan, is to put your project on it that you anticipate upcoming.
And we have the opportunity, obviously, if we're talking about 2024, the capital facility plan goes through approval during the budget process. So that's when we can, if we put it in 2024 for now, and then we can decide during the budgeting process for the next year if we're going to slide it.
A year to it, that's fine.
Yeah. Councilmember Kurtz.
Oh, I was just gonna say 2023, but it's splitting hairs at this point, and thinking of planning, and if we can move it, I'm fine with 2024.
Councilmember Dunn.
Just to kind of reflect on Katie's observation mere moments ago. So we're ready to look at each other on the Zoom meeting for the next 2 years. That's where we're at.
Well,
That's what it was. That's what we just got from the staff, is that.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think the path we're on is that the council and staff could be here and we would continue, like right now, we all have our computers in front of us in order to manage the Zoom thing. And that might be what it looks like going forward. Technologically, we need to figure that out. But every meeting that I've been to, and I know Katie's been going to a lot of the same ones, everybody is reporting increased attendance at their meetings because it's so much easier to attend. So, you know, we need to make sure that we're ready technology-wise to handle that. But what I would like to do is, we can't go backwards, I wish we could. I would like, I don't know who could do this, maybe Ann can help us. I would like to just keep a count of how many people are attending remotely at each of our meetings. Well, and when we get back in person, how many attendees do we have at each meeting, not including staff, not including council? So we can try to track some of those trends. So we'll at least have some data to work with.
So Councilmember Dunn, I see the council coming back to the chambers, I see our staff coming back to the chambers, and I see the public coming back to our chambers. But I see this other dimension that we didn't have before, and it's the virtual participation on a regular basis all the time. And that's where we're challenged.
And is there any capital expense in resolving that challenge?
Yes, there is.
Yeah.
It'll be an investment in some technology and probably some other things that, on the facility side, maybe some protocols that we don't currently have when it comes to cleaning and assessing people coming in and going out, masks. I mean, yeah, it'll be a huge undertaking.
Yeah. From the software side and thing, I know Dan, you and I have talked just a little bit about cloud. We do have some stuff coming to the council. I think it's the next meeting on Office 365, moving to the cloud, and then we're continuing discussions on what happens after that. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. I can certainly reflect back several years before getting on the council of sitting out in the audience here, and there may be 10 to 12 people who sit in the audience. But if you start deducting the city staff that is there, we had 3 to 5.
And family members.
Yeah, and it was basically that always. It was the same gang.
Yeah.
If you want to put it that way.
Yeah.
The benefit that I've seen that is just the exposure since the COVID, that when we started the meeting, I had to look down and we had 23 individuals already on here. I've seen meetings where we've had 35. The only time we've ever maxed out this room is usually if we're affecting the pocketbooks of citizens, and then they come here in droves. The benefit I see is that alone, I have been contacted personally by individuals who I have no idea who they are, never met them, but now they're on Zoom. And they're sending me emails or calling me saying, hey, you brought this up, or another council member brought it up, what do you think of that? These are individuals reaching out that we have never had before. So that in itself is very, very positive, and I'm encouraged moving forward with that. Thank you.
Okay, so it sounds like we've talked about City Hall. Okay, what do we have? Orchard Park Community Gardens.
There you go. Yeah, thank you.
So if we can start that off, because obviously it's not broken because we don't have any. And I don't know what our typical cost has been in the past for community gardens.
Jen, can you help us out? Because generally it's a fenced-in area that has garden plots, hose, water, a little bit of equipment. Jen, do you have a ballpark figure on cost for a community garden?
Yeah, several years ago when we upgraded, let's see, I'm trying to think, when we upgraded the Arboretum, I remember Andrew and I talking that the total cost was around 20,000, but that was several years ago. So we haven't had a rough estimate since then, but knowing that in the past, you're looking at around 20,000 for the garden boxes, the fencing, and the footing. You know, maybe inflate that some.
And am I safe to assume, Jen, that since they'd be put at the park, that access to extend the water to that area wouldn't be too bad?
No, I would think that would be fairly nominal because that's just adding a couple of frost frees to our existing system. The biggest cost is the fencing and the garden boxes themselves.
Yeah. Okay. Any discussion on those? We've got them at the Arboretum, we've got them at Rocky Hill. And that's it right now.
Correct.
Yeah. So we don't have any on the north side.
I think I do recall Joe Frank mentioning something about community gardens going in to the north where the winter glow storage boxes are now. I'm just going to throw that out there.
That is correct, Jen. Joe Frank had indicated that he has plans for community gardens in one of their parkettes, if you will.
Huh. All right, so that would obviously, in effect, be a funding source, right, if somebody else is going to put them in. So overall, is this something we want to proceed with? Just quick show of hands. Yes, 1, 2, 3, 4.
What was the question?
Is the community gardens at Orchard Park something in a broad sense that we want to proceed with?
So do we want the project?
Yeah.
Well, I just heard that.
It's already on the list.
I just heard that somebody else was going to do it.
Well, that's what I was saying, that I would kind of consider that the funding source, like Greenstone would be the funding source if they're the ones putting it in.
Okay.
But do we want to,
Okay,
yeah.
yes.
Would we want to proceed? Councilmember Wood, if I saw your hand up.
Oh, I was just.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Councilmember Kurtz?
Oh, what was my question? It had to do with the current community gardens now and the demand for those. Is there usually a waiting list for those?
No, not usually a waiting list, but they usually do fill up with maybe the exception of 1 or 2 plots. But generally in years past, they have filled up completely. But I wouldn't say there's a waiting list. Maybe if there is, it's maybe a handful of people.
Okay. And a follow-up question. I thought that we were doing the budget piece. I thought we had talked about this and approved it. We just weren't sure what the cost was. Am I not remembering that right?
No, we have no budget for it.
Yeah, there's no dollar amount
There's
on
no
it.
dollar amount.
But it is, it's kind of middle of the road on the priority list. If you look at it, it's 56 and our top one is double that at 98. But if we possibly have another, if Greenstone is possibly going to fund that, and we will follow up on that. I don't think there's any reason, if that is truly the case, that obviously we'll go ahead with it.
So may I interject? I think that what I understand, and Lisa, tell me if I'm wrong, what I heard is Greenstone is proposing their own community gardens to the north of Orchard Park on their property, not funding community gardens at Orchard Park.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Okay. And Jen, I guess I would be I'm confused as to then who would have access to those people who are in a certain portion of their HOA? Because I know, for example, on Country Vista North, where the cottages are, there's some community gardens behind those cottages against the Huntwood property, and those are just for those homes. Do you think that's what they're talking about?
I would imagine, but I do not know. I don't know any more detail than what I just shared.
If I might suggest we get a little bit more information prior to any discussions related to the capital facilities plan going forward. This is a small dollar amount that we could easily accommodate once Jen has her seasonals and whatnot to install. It's just a matter of whether or not we feel like we need that at Orchard Park, given if there's going to be another community garden in the vicinity thereof.
Yeah, we'll continue to clarify that, because if they do it like they have for the cottages, it's only for a select number of homes in a certain area. So I don't see them opening those up for the entire River District area, but I may be totally wrong on that.
So let's follow up with Greenstone and get the scope of the community gardens that they're thinking about and see if that's enough for the River District, if we should supplement.
Yeah. And if we do, and if that is restricted to certain homes, and we, go ahead with our own project at Orchard Park, and you asked the question about it, are they usually full? Well, I suspect the ones in the Arboretum and Rocky Hill are taken up by people on this side of the highway, and that anything in Orchard Park would probably be heavily used as well. Just speculation on my part. So we'll follow up with that and move forward. So Phil, I've got a question for you at this point. I'm looking at the list. So we just talked about the Orchard Park Community Gardens. The next 3 are funded in certain years, and then we get down into like the 40 range. are we looking at, kind of drawing a line, or do we want to go through the rest of those? Because, obviously Trailhead's big on the list, and that's going to take up most of our time here in the next few months to get through that and move forward.
Whatever you suggest, Mayor, good. Whatever the council wants to do.
So council, do you want to finish going through the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 additional items on there, or even the next 3? Because I figure since the Fallen Heroes, Town Square Master Plan, and River District are all funded and have years to see them, I don't know if there's any discussion that needs to go on that. And then we have Rocky Hill parking lot expansion, Town Square Park expansion, but they're rated quite a bit lower than everything else. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that we're spending some time going through these, but in all honesty, I'm sitting here. We've already spent a lot of time and effort in prioritizing what we have here. Some are funded, some are not. I would think that we could spend our time best by investing in it, looking at things that aren't funded.
Yep.
Do we want to fund those items? If so, they become more of a priority. They go up the list for things that are already funded. So to sit here and rehash what the priority is, I believe is somewhat anti-productive.
Yep.
I would like to see if it raises to the top, let's put some money to it, because then it becomes a priority. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Dunn?
I just observed in comparison, we've already asserted the library is not funded. So I don't think we're going to put dollar amounts on things tonight to retain items in this list.
Any other discussion? Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you for that comment, Councilman Dunn. I agree. We don't have time to start getting into what we're going to fund here, because then we have to start analyzing what we want to do before we can say what type of a dollar amount is. So I think for something like that, we would need another meeting. Thanks for your comment, though.
Yes, Mayor. I believe that we've reached our point of usefulness. We've made some good decisions. We've got some big things on our plates. I think we just go ahead and concentrate on those for now, and we can always circle back, use a certain president's POI's phrase, and be back with these later.
Agreed. And I think this has been a good process to open up some questions that we may not have thought of and get some of these things back out on the table. And Phil, fully appreciate the effort you put into this, and it's really given us a different way of looking at things that hopefully we can use a lot more in the future. So I think we all appreciate that. So just to follow up on a couple of the action items here, guys. Let me go back a page or two. Ooh, sorry. Lift boundaries, I saw that, so we'll get that out. Future action items with regards to adding police department vehicles and other rolling stock. I'm going to start using that a lot more to the CFP. And again, with regards to what changes or modifications might we look at with regards to financial policies and how we track that. Kramer Harvard Road dollar amount update. I think we pretty much got that answer during the meeting, so I'll mark that off. And we already talked about additional special meetings / retreat. So we'll get the doodle poll out. We'll get the link for the presentation on Trailhead to the council along with any associated documents. And if you guys want to start keeping track of questions, I obviously, wait and start firing them off after you see the presentation. Let's get those to Katie so we can have those prepped ahead of time and track attendance going forward. So maybe we can talk to Ann later this week. Ann, if that's something you could help us with. I don't know if she's still on. No, she's not. Yeah. We'll talk to her later this week. Yeah.
We'll go back. All these meetings are recorded.
Oh, true.
Todd, so can we see who was on the meeting?
Yeah, we don't need names. We just need to know how many people that other than staff and council members.
I believe we can get that.
That'd be great. Yeah, so we can have at least a little bit of going back data, but we won't obviously have data from when we were live and in person before all this, but it's a good place to start. All right, did I miss any action items, you guys?
Chris, I have just a reminder to all the council, we have a staff appreciation lunch on Friday at 11:30. If you're gonna, be here, that'd be wonderful. Could you let us know so we can make sure we have enough food? There'll be a sandwich and, cookies and chips and water.
Okay, so if there's no other discussion, we have another period for citizen comments. So if anybody would like to throw in their 3 minutes worth, shoot a chat to Todd and he will let me know if there's anybody wanting to comment. I'll pause for a moment or two. Nobody? Okay, going once, going twice. So before we do adjourn, council members who, if you need assistance with getting the backgrounds on, like Councilmember Langford and I have, feel free to stick around. Todd can hopefully walk us through that before we hang out on everybody tonight. So I guess we'll motion to adjourn. Oh wait, Councilmember Wood.
I would just like to thank Councilmember Foyer for all the work you did on this.
Thank you.
You did a great job for your first presentation to council. I hope I don't have to do it for a while. Thank you.
All right, so I guess we will adjourn, and like I said, those council members who need help with their backgrounds, stick around. Thanks, everybody.
Good night. Thanks.